into that. Like Nate Diaz trash talks, but he doesn't really do it creatively. It's it's just, sometimes you don't even understand what he's trying to say. But Eddie Alvarez, here's what he had to say across 3 different quotes. Conor McGregor, this guy is so offensive-minded and ever on the defense that whatever you put on him on the defense, he gets so flustered and so upset. He continues to say, at a certain point in our press conference call, he got desperate. He started talking about my wife and kids and things like that. That is, for me, just a sign of desperation. You don't talk about another man's family unless you're like through the roof pissed off. And continues lastly, if we were in a fight and I was putting him on the defense, I looked at this like this man is just closing his eyes, throwing bolos. Just to see him cross that, it's good. It's a good sign for me. So, again, in the press conference, which we'll throw, I guess we'll find some pieces to throw into this clip for you. I like Eddie Alvarez's, not really necessarily the trash talking, but the grin.
Yeah.
And I think there's a degree of confidence in him. I do. I don't know what's going to happen in this fight. If I'm going to predict a winner, I think I have to predict Conor McGregor because every time I don't, he wins, and every time I do, he loses. So I don't know what the hell's going to happen. However, in Eddie Alvarez's case, there's just this smile he has about him. And I think it drives Conor McGregor a little more than other fighters he's had. Nate Diaz throws water bottles at him. That creates like an actual explosion in a press conference. But Eddie Alvarez, that little grin, it's kind of annoying. It's kind of undercutting. Maybe it's triggering. I don't know. I
think in his own way, he's just literally saying that sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Eddie Alvarez?
I think that's all he's saying.
That's all he's saying. He's got the belt on his shoulder. That helps.
Yeah, but no, I think in all seriousness, I think he's intelligent. You don't trade blows with Conor McGregor when you're going word for word.
Right, you're going to lose.
You're going to lose. But one thing is, I've talked about this before. He's an Irishman who's very witty. Like these things roll off the tongue. Like there's something different. I'm very fond of when you're insulting someone. I should do it on the field as well. I told you this when I used to insult someone. And I would call them whatever I would call them in my Scottish accent. It would sound more aggressive. I'd get really into them, and they'd turn around and be like, yeah, so's your mom. Where's your kilt? And I'd be like, I don't get it. But fine, if that's what you want.
What would you say to people?
I don't know.
Come on.
I would call them...
wankers?
No, I don't want to go there because it could be taken offensively. Let's just say I would be very... I would be very offensive on the park at times. And I would get my point across to try and break them down mentally. Conor McGregor does it, and I think it's a smart thing. Nate Diaz, I don't even think thought about this. I think he just thought to himself, this guy's trying to insult me, fuck him. I think in a way Nate Diaz did a very similar thing to what Eddie Alvarez is doing. Eddie Alvarez is just vocalizing that a little more clearly. He's like, I think he's desperate. I think Nate Diaz was doing the same thing. I think he was literally saying, fuck you, like I don't care about any of your words. We'll see what happens in the octagon. That's literally what Eddie Alvarez is doing. He's not doing what Jose Aldo was trying to do, which is trying to go back tit for tat and try
retire?
He was trying to hit him back with the same sort of smash, the same sort of trash talk. Same as Chad Mendes tried to do it as well. You know what I mean? And I think Donald Cerrone did it in a press conference with him.
Donald Cerrone is a good trash talker too.
So they were hitting him back, but again, it's like you don't go toe to toe with a guy who's a verbal gymnast.
Yeah, again, and a lot of people are going to look at this and they're going to say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to reference this once again. They're going to say like, oh my God, Conor McGregor, all you do is talk about Conor McGregor in the trash. Like, he's good at it. It's entertaining.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
It's entertaining. Again, how many people are going to buy the pay-per-view this weekend? Everybody, which also, by the way, because I said I will not buy a pay-per-view with Conor McGregor on it to watch him fight, I'm just going to be there.
And we didn't pay for it. So
I guess I don't know what to tell you.
He's end of the bargain.
We're really excited to be there. There's a lot of great fights in this card. Robin Black will be in with you on Monday. They're leaving me in New York to binge eat pizza, bagels, bagels and pizza. On days.
I'm going to count how many times you're just going to look at me in the middle of whatever we're doing and be like, you want to get sliced?
I can't find it because it's an old Snapchat, but every morning I'd send Francis when I was back home for Christmas last year, maybe Thanksgiving, with my breakfast sandwich, and I'd say, I'm going to do inexplicable things to this bagel.
Yeah, and I would just respond with, I just don't want to know.
You're a strange person.
Yeah, I did say that back. I was like, you're a very strange. You do know that there's a hole in that bagel, and I'm going to take that in the way that most people would. I'm going to envision you to be, what's his name from American Pie? Jim Levinson.
Jason Biggs. Yeah. And so comment below, like, favorite, subscribe to all the videos you've seen in this segment, whichever you may call it. Send us some fun tweets when we're at UFC 205.
Oh, if you're there.
And if you're in New York City, we'll be obviously around Madison Square Garden, because that's where the fight's going to be. Send us some tweets. We'd be happy to meet you guys if you're around, and we'll come outside and give you a high five and talk about sports.
Take some pics.
Maybe eat some bagels. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to the program we're calling the Young Turks today. Michael Schur along with Ben Mankiewicz, and
it's okay.
Well, come on,
Jimmy Dore.
Jimmy Dore. That's right. Jimmy, Ben, and I are going to be taking you through this hour. Jimmy, you're going to be on for 2 hours. Ben,
just the first hour today.
Ben's going to be here all day.
I think I have to stay the second hour.
He's with you all day. Jimmy and I get to go out and not hang out together because we hate each other. Deeply. But there is plenty to discuss today, and none of it is terribly exciting in terms of. There's no great news that we're bringing you today here from the Young Turks.
No feel-good stories?
There are no feel-good stories. I mean, I guess there are feel-good stories if you delight in the sort of the ridiculousness of our president-elect, and that makes you feel good.
I feel good about a Muslim registry. I think most of the viewers do too. That makes me feel good. Yeah,
that's true. Maybe you know what? It's turning good.
Lee and I, my wife and I, we didn't register for anything when we got married.
Right.
So this is a nice little.
This would be
we didn't register. That's a good.
That's great.
People are, I think, being a little too negative about.
I'll get you the China, but the Uyghur China, right? The Muslim part of China. I'll get you that China.
Oh, the Uyghur.
Yeah,
right.
The Uyghurs. And Ben, we should point out, you look great. You dressed well. You're unbuttoned.
Well, if I were standing, I of course would button
that
this
up.
top
That's
button.
right.
But also all my good suits are being cleaned, so I have to go with this rather raggedy jacket.
All my good suits. All of a sudden, he's the all my good suits.
All
guy,
my
right?
good suits.
Ben Mankiewicz was in the New York Times yesterday.
I missed this.
Fantastic spread talking about he and Tom Ford, late of Gucci, but also now a filmmaker.
And not late of Tom Ford.
And not late of Tom Ford, but I mean, he made his mark as Gucci, and then Tom Ford.
I thought you meant that he was in an article with the ex-mayor of Toronto or something.
No, that's Rob Ford.
That's Rob
and
Ford.
He died. You don't want to be in that article, right? That's not the one.
Ford.
But after Nixon resigned, Tom Ford became president, and Ben yesterday sat with him, and it was just amazing. It was a really great article. You should look it up online. It's the New York Times.
But I got to tell you, so I saw it first online on Saturday. This was Philip Galantis is a writer for the New York Times, and he puts two kind of random people together for lunch, and then he participates in a conversation of three, and then he writes it up. Like he put Nancy Pelosi at lunch with. I've completely forgotten who he put Nancy Pelosi.
Let us guess.
Okay, sure.
Okay. He put Nancy Pelosi at lunch with Amari Stoudemire.
That's right. Right. You nailed it first try. With Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh, okay.
He put the Jay Johnson, who is the head of the Department of Homeland Security. Jay Johnson, the head of Homeland Security, with Carrie from Homeland, with Claire Danes, who plays the sort of the CIA officer on Homeland. And he put me together with Tom Ford. Which I was really nervous about. But then I read the story and it was good. But then you get the paper on Sunday. Jesus, it was like ridiculous. It was like getting the story twice. It was like this giant spread and these beautiful color pictures.
It was amazing.
I gotta be honest, it looked great.
I gotta see this.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Too bad you didn't get Claire Danes.
Yeah, that would have been no. And Tom Ford was smart about movies and. We were all, but the conversation was full of guarded optimism about the election. We did it like a week before the election, and they were like, "I feel good," and I was like, "Well, I don't feel good at all," but we're a little more hopeful now, and we ripped James Comey, and then there was like, everything will be fine.
Amazing, and they talked to Ben about fashion. We learned a couple of Ben's fashion hints, like he buttons his.
Well, I didn't. I never buttoned my jacket when I was standing on the air. Jimmy has watched me.
Of course.
But
studied you, Ben.
It felt too formal. But Tom Ford said, really, I met him. I was like, "Hey, really nice to meet you," and he said, "Really nice to meet you too." button your jacket. That's how it started. And so I then went to Atlanta shortly thereafter to tape a week's worth of segments, and I buttoned my jacket. That's the end of that little...
But does any of it matter when police are shooting water cannons and rubber pellets at water protectors?
Actually, no.
I guess it doesn't.
Yeah.
That was my segue. Well, anyway, you should check this article out. Ben was great in it, and I've heard great things about Ben on a cruise too, by the way, which is an entirely different thing. But you should watch TCM because that's where you can see Ben all the time introducing movies. But we do this program to talk about what is right and what is wrong in the world. And one of the things that is wrong in our world here in the United States is happening in North Dakota. They're trying to build a pipeline there from North Dakota to Illinois, and people, most notably Native Americans, tribes there in North Dakota, protesting what the fact that it's being built, and it's being built first of all, that it's being built. Secondly, that it's being built next to their water supply, thereby endangering it. So these protesters, it's a nice thing to call people water protectors. All protesters should be called water protectors, but they're literally protecting their water. And last night, and I would say one of the climaxes of this entire interaction, the police have come down very hard. They came down very hard last night with water cannons, with rubber bullets, tear gas, and pepper spray. And let's look at the intensifying police presence in North Dakota.
This is a medic.
So basically we have water cannons that are aimed towards our water protectors. So we're having severe cases of hypothermia. They are aiming for people's hands. I took one patient that had the skin shot off of his finger, so he was down to the bone. They're also aiming for the heads. There was another brother that got shot in the head and was losing consciousness. So it's pretty deliberate and it's pretty violent. Woman got shot in the head too, said this gentleman.
Shot in the head by rubber bullets, and that was August White, who I guess we are having when we don't have a crew there. We've had crews there at the Young Turks, and when we're not there, he does he's taping stuff for us. Yeah. And that was, in case you didn't catch that at the beginning, that was a medic who had treated some of the injuries.
Unaware of this has been most of the national news media, I think maybe until last night, and because I started seeing it covered in places and with the regularity in places that it hadn't been covered, and I think that has to do with the election and the prioritization of something like this. This is a real story, and this is an us versus them story that's happening. And I think, Jimmy, do you followed this story and you've been vocal about it for quite a while, longer than most people in the media, but do you think that it has reached now a point where something like last night had to happen, unfortunately, to start getting the attention of people in the media?
I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more attention. Honestly, I hope this gets it. This is always what gets it more attention. But I'm really not heartened by it. Of course, there is going to be more violence because these people aren't going away and they're going to build that pipeline, and so they're going up against the most powerful interests in the world, right? And now they have the power of armed government behind them.
President Obama previously had said that they were looking at either rerouting the pipeline, doing different infrastructure to change the pipeline. Empowered perhaps by the election or not, there are the people that are in charge of this, who own this pipeline, who are building this pipeline, have said, no, this is going to go on as planned. A, is that true? Do we know if that's true? And B, do we know if President Obama has gotten involved? I mean, a lot of people who've criticized the president criticize him for not talking about this, not making an issue out of this. If he were, in fact, behind the scenes working to reroute it and do the kind of diplomacy that he's been given to doing rather than standing up and speaking about it on occasion, is that possible? Do you know anything about that? Is that in the works still?
No, I mean, I haven't heard anything about it. Jordan Sheridan has been up there, and I've talked to everybody who's involved in this, from Jordan to West to...
Jordan and West, Jordan Sheridan, our correspondent, Wes Clark.
Yes, and they're going, and Wes is going to be going up there with a group of veterans soon. So I wish that would happen sooner. No, I haven't heard anything about it. This feels very reminiscent to me of Occupy Wall Street when Barack Obama just let it happen. And it also feels reminiscent of the Wisconsin when they took the teachers union away from them.
Took the bargaining rights of the teachers.
Yes, so it makes it feels the same to me. He's very silent on it. He said before, when he talked about it before, he seemed very said he was sleepy. He was very soft-spoken, and he said he was going to let it play out for a few weeks after he gave false equivalency that both sides have to remain nonviolent. So it's a very I don't even want to talk about this story. Like when I saw this was on, it hurts me. You know, like I don't want to, because I just know how this is going to end up. And it's ending up that way right now.
But here's the thing. I mean, all these hard stories are so hard to talk about. Like, Charles Pierce, who writes for Esquire,
yes.
Who we've all seen what he said. Today he tweeted, according to footage, there are law enforcement atrocities going on at Standing Rock. Yo, news directors, it's the Pettus Bridge out there, an allusion to the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. So nobody wanted to talk about what was going on in the South. But when it got to the bridge and it got ugly, that changed things.
Yeah, and I Occupy Wall Street's an interesting comparison, but it just felt when you're firing rubber bullets and using a water cannon, I mean, that just feels like Bull Connor, and that feels like civil rights movement more to me, and that's galvanizing because I hope because it just is an obvious moment where the situation isn't fair, and when the response does, and we need cameras there. That's the thing, and you need coverage. I mean, we all bemoan the quality of cable news journalism, and we should. It's not totally worthless yet. And so regular coverage of it, I imagine, would make a difference. I think
it made a difference on the Pettus Bridge. I mean, that's when people up north started paying attention. People in other countries started paying attention when they actually had the footage. And at that time, it was photographs and newsreels. But coming over to America, it was news.
That was a bigger movement.
Yeah.
And that was a movement it wasn't as easy to dismiss as, a lot of things that worked against the protesters here.
Yeah.
One, the biggest election of our lifetime and far of coverage, interest, and its mere placement. The American South was a place people go. Nobody goes where this place is. Remote, there's no big market nearby. So all of that worked against it. Now the election's over, but obviously everything this guy does is news. I mean, his wife and kid aren't going to move into the White House. Although imagine if Bill Clinton weren't moving into the White House, it would literally be the lead story. And here we're but it's all pointless, and it's all. But we're focused on other things, and not this. There is obviously in this window of a holiday season and the inevitability of Trump's election by the Electoral College and swearing in, which is still 2 months away. If it's going to get coverage, here we go. It would have to be now. But these are literally the most powerless people in the country.
Unquestionably.
As should be said, fighting arguably the most powerful people in the country.
Right. And not to compare it to the civil rights movement, but the bridge was a flashpoint for it. So if it's going to get attention, now it's getting it, and now it should get attention, and it wasn't getting attention before. Ben mentioned the rubber bullets. Here's a man who was actually hit in the head in North Dakota by a rubber bullet.
They got him covered. He's got a head wound.
Got a head wound. Okay. Great. We got water?
Yeah, but we only have one.
Okay. I'm going to sit your truck up here. Oh, yeah. The white top. All right, I'll get it. He also needs a blanket. Who has a blanket?
There's a blanket right behind him.
Honestly, when someone came and put a blanket on me earlier, it just pushed the fucking water under my skin and made it colder.
Does anyone have a flash?
I took my jacket off. I had more layers. Two guys hitting the crowd.
Yeah, hold on, stop. Passenger seat, is it open?
There's someone in there that hasn't.
This man was shot directly in the head
that's what
with
we're
a
doing.
rubber bullet.
All right, I know it's gonna be hard.
Could have
Lean your
killed
head
him.
back,
He's
watch
lucky
it.
to be alive.
Lean to the side. Yep, I know. Even if you do that, throw.
Prayers, man, prayers.
You're a hero.
Additionally, really, really cold, and the temperatures in the low 20s.
Yeah, and you're spraying water on them.
Yeah.
And as the medic said, there's hypothermia cases. It's not hard to imagine that when it's 20 degrees outside and you get sprayed water, there's going to be some hypothermia. It's not like you can run to the hotel. The nearest hotel is, I heard, 30 miles away. What we need to change, if this is a Pettus Bridge type situation, we need, the citizen journalism has been great. What mainstream journalism can provide is mainstream acceptance. And someone who theoretically could then challenge, what the citizen journalists can't do is go to whoever ordered the firing of the water cannons or the rubber bullets and say, Why'd you fire the water cannons and the rubber bullets? Theoretically, CNN, MSNBC, CBL, the New York Times, those places can. So they need to do it, and that will change. I hope would change the nature of the story.
What do you think their reluctance is?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it seemed like a marginal story to a lot of people for a long time. It seems like less of a marginal story. Part of it is our ability to focus. Like when the election's going on, it's literally a resource. They're not going to take someone off covering the election and send them out there. I would say that's a mistake and something that probably would not have happened in 1965 or before the 1964 election, but happens now. Whatever the reasons before, it happened. I don't think they're conspiratorial. I think they have to believe that this is a relevant story to Americans. But at some point, your job is both to report on the news and to alert people to what the news is, too. It's not just, well, Americans aren't interested in this. At some point, you say as a journalist, Americans aren't interested in this, but they ought to be interested in this, and then you go cover it.
And this is a story that people, generally the news would move on from pretty quickly once it was over. And that's part of the problem with these pipelines, it turns out, is that they just go from moment to moment and they keep getting built and they cover them for a minute and now the story's old. I mean, because everybody was talking about the pipeline for a while before the election. So Ben is 100% right. I mean, it's the ability of people watching to focus and the people deciding what's interesting news, putting it on the air. It has been interesting news. It's now more interesting, A, because of what it's up against, and a lot of people don't want to watch the new president-elect either. So they're hungering for another news story, and I think that's part of it.
Weren't we waiting? Wasn't the Army Corps of Engineers going to look to what inexplicably didn't happen in the first place?
Yes.
The Army Corps of Engineers was going to look to see whether there was a threat to the Standing Rock Sioux water.
Yes.
An environmental impact thing. They're still
so
holding off on their final decision, apparently.
And they're waiting to have talks with them as well.
Right.
The Corps and the
but as the company goes forward, right, and to see whether and also to see whether the burial ground was disrupted, to see whether it would. But and then Obama saying, hey, maybe we should take these things into account in the first place. Yes, you should take them into account in the first place, but okay, you're taking them into account now. So since that's happening, in a sane world, the company would just wait. And they would call everybody home and they would cover their stuff with a tarp or whatever it is you do when you're building a pipeline, and you would wait for word. But when you might have to move your stuff in another direction, since there doesn't seem to be, unlike what Bernie Sanders has to say, and we'll get to that momentarily, which is don't build the pipeline at all. I mean, for the Standing Rock issue, the issue is they just want it moved. I mean, I'm sure most of them would like it not built at all. But first and foremost nobody seems to be talking now about not building it at all.
This is an eminent domain issue at its core. And the people that are being eminent domained here are the Standing Rock Sioux. And not to mention other tribes up there as well that stake a claim to that area.
Amnesty International sent people there last month, and to make sure that to see whether there were human rights abuses by law enforcement. Again, that shouldn't happen here, and I believed for a long time that sort of thing wouldn't happen here. That we wouldn't have to worry about it. But the police, because of the remote nature of it and because of the lack of cameras, unquestionably are emboldened. Because there's nobody checking them.
So what do you
And I'm sure the company said, we don't have to imagine, hey, clear these guys out, God damn it, and get this done so when the Corps of Engineers comes through, I don't want to wait 10 minutes before we start going. I don't want to wait 5 minutes. We get that report, we are drilling, we're constructing. And to construct, obviously, we can't kill people while that'll be a problem. Yeah. That'll cost us this. So clear those people out. And because there's no significant media presence there, because it's all people like August White, and God bless him, the company, I'm sure, felt emboldened and empowered to behave in this way. And my hunch is they're patting themselves on the back. Literally, I'm sure somewhere there was a conversation where they're like, hey, we didn't use real bullets. We used water. Water and rubber bullets. What are they complaining about? You want us to get tough? You just look what will happen when we get tough.
They're protecting the water. We're using it.
That's right.
So there was a story, a few weeks ago or a week and a half ago about two police officers who quit. Or there was reports that they had said that they were going to turn in their badge because they didn't approve of the violence being used on those. And people were like, look, isn't that good? And I said, no, this is actually bad because now those 2 good guys aren't there anymore and they're going to be replaced by 2 bad guys.
Right.
And so when you saw everybody was happy about that story, and I was like, that's actually a bad story because now we just have, maniacs out there and look what they're doing.
Unless that story gets covered in the way you hope it would get covered, then it becomes a big deal. Then those guys can become spokesmen and people on the air, and it makes a difference. But you're right, if you just walked away, not in any way the same thing. But my grandfather, when he used to write movies, and he didn't like to do, he would just refuse to do something, and on principle. Right, he wouldn't write a scene for a movie called The Spanish Main. There's a big ship sinking at the end, and they were like, it costs too much money. Just write a scene where they talk about the ship sinking. Right, that'll be cheaper. Right? And he was like, no, outrageous. And they were like, all right, you do it. It's not like you don't win by just walking away.
Right.
When my grandfather was doing the dry cleaning at Yale, let's listen to Bernie Sanders. You'll remember him. Bernie is a senator from Vermont, and he ran for president earlier this year. But he has been an advocate for the Standing Rock not from the word go, but as earlier than any public speaker. And he also had a message for President Obama.
So we say to President Obama, in any and every way you can, stop the pipeline. Every environmental study will tell you, do not build this pipeline. And if there are other approaches, such as declaring Standing Rock a federal monument, let's do that.
And President Obama has made a lot of places federal monuments, so this wouldn't be new to him. But I want to wrap this, but I want to ask each of you a question. What do you think President Obama? I mean, I don't think he's sitting back there saying, "Oh, we have to protect these corporations. I'm taking their side. Boom, that's it." And Jimmy, and you may think that, I don't know, but I don't think that's really what's going on. What is the motivation for the president not yet taking a stand on this? And do you conjecture that he's trying to do things in a back channel way here?
That would be amazing if he was doing that. I hope that's what he's doing, trying to do a back channel thing. But I will say this: I don't know, Michael. I often say that to my wife. Like, how do you think he sleeps at night, knowing that he could do something about this right now, and he's not? And there's many situations, not just this, that I say that about. But I'll just give you a real quick quote. This is Barack Obama before this Standing Rock situation started, and what he had to say about Native Americans before that. He said, "We also recommit to supporting tribal self-determination, security, and prosperity for all Native Americans. While we cannot erase the scourges of broken promises of our past, we will move ahead together in writing a new, brighter chapter in our joint history." So that's what is the problem. Like, he knows all the right words to say, and then when the time for action comes, he doesn't. Like, he told the teachers, I'll put on the comfortable shoe. The time came to put it on, he didn't. The time to stand up to those words are now, and I hope he stands up to them.
I hope he does too. I don't know what the motive. I mean, I'm sure the initial motivation, it's Barack Obama, and he thought we got the Corps. He did something. The Corps of Engineers went, and they're going to reevaluate it, and he thought that there was a chance that would broker a peaceful settlement until at least it's somebody else's problem, right? But it isn't now, and it's escalating. And I hope now that he does something. And he should have gone to Wisconsin, and that might have made a difference.
Yeah, he definitely should have gone to Wisconsin.
Should have gone to Wisconsin.
So too should Hillary of Clinton go to Wisconsin. Okay, we move on from that, but the Young Turks are going to be covering that probably more intensively than any place else. So keep watching this space for that story. A big story that came out of New York almost by accident this weekend was Vice President-elect Mike Pence, the governor of Indiana, went to see the hit Broadway show Hamilton, was met with boos when he walked in. People were tweeting like crazy from the show saying, the vice president-elect is here. They're booing. After the show, in an unprecedented way, I mean, during the show, actually, at different times during different numbers, there was extended applause, sending messages, particularly on immigration, to Mike Pence, who they knew who was there. Afterwards, Pence got up with his security detail, started to walk out, and this is what happened then.
Vice President-elect Pence, I see you walking out, but I hope you will hear us just a few more moments. There's nothing to boo here, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing to boo here. We're all here sharing a story of love. We have a message for you, sir. We hope that you will hear us out. And I encourage everybody to pull out your phones and tweet and post, because this message needs to be spread far and wide, okay? Vice President-elect Pence, we welcome you and we truly thank you for joining us here at Hamilton and American Musical. We really do. We, sir, we are the diverse America who are alarmed and anxious that your new administration will not protect us, our planet, our children, our parents, or defend us and uphold our inalienable rights, sir. But we truly hope that this show has inspired you to uphold our American values and to work on behalf of all of us. All of us.
The star of Hamilton, Brandon Victor Dixon, who I think, guys, gave there was nothing critical of Mike Pence right there. He was reaching out, saying exactly how he felt and they felt in a non-inflammatory way. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, that was really
sounded like hysterical harassment to me.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's a fellow named Donald Trump. He just became elected president, and he took to Twitter to talk about what Brandon Victor Dixon and the Hamilton, both the crowd and the cast, did. Here is Donald Trump. This is number one. Our wonderful future VP, Mike Pence, was harassed last night, as Ben just said, at the theater by the cast of Hamilton. Cameras blazing. This should not happen.
Harassed. So that statement, harassed.
Right. Harassed. And there was nothing harassing, really, about what they did. They spoke. We'll move on.
Cameras blazing.
Right.
You're the vice president.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what happens wherever you go.
Exactly.
There were cell phones.
Yeah.
And there were cell phones.
Yes.
And there was one that we've seen, right? I mean, I'm sure
Blazing.
there were many. Blazing. Let's go back. Let's keep going to Donald J. Trump. You can follow him, folks, at the real Donald Trump. The theater must always be a safe and special place. The cast of Hamilton was very rude last night to a very good man. Mike Pence apologized.
Now, before we move on from that one, I when I saw this one, I tweeted, because instantly, if you say this one with a British accent, it's actually pretty great.
Let me hear it.
The theater must always be a safe and special place.
Right. And if you say that and your last name is Lincoln, it's a completely different meaning there.
Donnie Tanahan sounds very triggered in that, and what he's really asking for literally is a safe place. But don't they often give people a hard time for, you need a safe space?
Right.
Isn't he there? And first of all, Mike Pence wasn't asked one question about his horrible anti-LGBT stances at the debate, so it's up to fucking actors.
Which horrible stance
right?
do you mean? The one where he was going to take funding for AIDS treatment and HIV prevention and redirect it to gay conversion therapy?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, okay.
There was a vice presidential debate.
There was one. There actually was one, yeah. And he won.
Indeed he did.
It's funnier that these guys feel that where they actually get harassed is at a theater, and where they don't is in a newsroom.
That's right.
That's exactly right. And Donald Trump was booed on his way to vote, so he knows what it feels like at this point. Donald Trump went on. There's more, folks. Said the cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear is highly overrated. Nobody has said that about Hamilton. It's universally, I think, thought of as fantastic. I don't know anyone who said it's overrated, but I'm sure there are one or two people, and they've all spoken to Donald Trump. Immediately apologized to Mike Pence for their terrible behavior. Well, let's hear then what Mike Pence had to say about it when he was asked about it on CBS News this weekend.
I heard the remarks that were made at the end, and what I can tell you is I wasn't offended by what was said. I'll leave to others whether it was the appropriate venue to say it. But I want to assure people who were disappointed in the election results, people are feeling anxious about this time in the life of our nation, that President-elect Donald Trump meant exactly what he said on election night, that he is going to be the president of all the people of the United States of America.
Until I am.
Right, right, until like March of 2018, when I'll be taking over. He just won't come to work.
That was the right answer.
That's the right answer.
That's the right answer.
At least Mike Pence knows something about how politics is supposed to work.
And some people who you would think might know about that, Newt Gingrich, you remember him, former Speaker of the House, he tweeted as well about this in a not Pencean way. He said, the arrogance and hostility of the Hamilton cast to Vice President-elect, a guest at the theater, is a reminder the left still fights.
Yeah, I mean, good. Right. I like the end of that tweet. It's a reminder that the left still fights. I mean, the arrogance, I guess you can call it arrogance, I suppose, that as stars of a Broadway show, they feel they have a right to speak to the... I don't agree with it, but you can make an argument that isn't insane, that it was arrogant. You know, good luck convincing many people.
Hostility.
Hostility.
Right.
Please don't boo.
Yeah.
Sir, we hope after the election that you will respect our rights, and we're nervous about it. Hostile.
Actually,
that's hostile.
This is frightening if that's how the left is going to fight, right? If they call that hostile fighting, that's a disaster for the left.
So I'm curious, because I go back and forth on this story. At first, I sent a tweet like, you know, eager for March of 2019 when this becomes the 8,374th worst thing that has happened during the Trump administration, to like, oh no, this is actually sort of serious, that this is a moment where the powerful were challenged, and even the most respectful type of public challenge was met with derision by the president-elect, and a sense that they have to apologize for daring to speak the truth to power, for daring to speak to Mike Pence. And to those who say, including many on the left, including a lot of people I like, that this was in the right place because it's the theater and you're a guest and I don't know, when are they going to get a chance that Mike Pence is going to be in front of them again?
Right.
And so I don't think it was the wrong place, and I think they handled it in a very unbelievably respectful
way. And had
way.
they not said it, I mean, they bettered the situation. The headlines would have been, unruly crowd boos Mike Pence, right? The left is their crybabies. Here's what happened. The cast came out and made it look better.
Said, don't boo, we want to read a statement of what our concerns are.
Did they mock Donald Trump's handicap or anything?
Yeah, right.
They didn't do that in public in front of a stadium?
But that wouldn't have been arrogant or hostile.
No, that wouldn't.
Yeah, it wasn't that Donald Trump mocked the reporter with the handicap and imitated. It was just the wrong place for that.
Yes.
There's a right place to mock somebody with a handicap, I think.
That's the thing. And I think there's also a right place to race bait. There's also a time to be an and a right place to be an anti-Semite.
Right.
There's also time and place is what this is all about. And at the theater just isn't
right. It's like when Michelle Obama went to the NASCAR race and they booed her, right? In Southern Virginia. That was not the right place to boo Michelle Obama at a NASCAR race. It's wrong place.
I bet they would disagree.
I bet they would disagree. Yeah. Well,
what do we think of the graphic?
Hey, Mikey.
Yeah.
Hey, Mikey likes it. It's all right.
I think it was good.
Was that yours?
Yeah, I was pleased with it. First of all, we spent 22 minutes, and then we were like, we got to come up with something.
Yeah, it doesn't show 22 minutes worth of work.
It does not show 22 minutes worth of work. I'll grant that, but like I don't know. I just think it's a nice little wonderful.
I've heard
70s.
Hey Mikey my whole life, and being my name, but I've not.
Hey Mikey, he likes it.
There was a crowd seeking to get his attention.
Mikey
hey Mikey.
Yeah, but Mikey didn't like it.
Yeah, and that's why we didn't include that part.
All right, we're going to take a little break here now. We have more Bernie Sanders ahead. We have Reince Priebus ahead, not as great a tease. And we have Muslims. Come on back. Back on the Young Turks, Michael Schur with Jimmy Dore and Ben Mankiewicz. We talked earlier about Bernie Sanders at the Dakota Access Pipeline and calling for that to be made a federal land and a federal registered land and to get. What am I?
Turning it into a national monument.
National monument. That's what I was looking for. National monument. Now Bernie Sanders, of course, later asked, as he often is, he's a senator, asked a lot about politics. He was asked his thoughts on the 2020 election, and Bernie Sanders, in very Bernie Sanders fashion, had an answer.
This is incredible, and I have to say this in all due respect. Are we ready? We haven't inaugurated this president, and we're talking about 2020 because it's easy to write about. What about talking about climate change and whether the planet survives? What about talking about income and wealth inequality in America? What about talking about youth unemployment in African American communities of 30-40%? What about talking about immigration reform, criminal justice reform? Those are the issues that the American people need to be engaged in. To start talking about who's going to be running in 2080, and look at you, you look like a good candidate. I mean, how much money do you have? Maybe we'll run you. I mean, I don't mean to be rude. But the American people are tired of that. They really are. They would like to hear serious discussion on serious issues. Who's running in 2020 or 2090 is of concern. And I got to tell you, people are turning off their TVs. They are tired of, all of that stuff.
I love that. I hadn't seen it. I read it. And, obviously Michael and I talked, and we've already talked about who's going to run in 2020, and we will again. And I get why the guy asked it. But, having been a reporter for a long time, man, it's a lot easier. That's the easy story. And the question was not just about 2020. What do you think's on Cory Booker? Right? So it was like, hey, let's ask him about Cory Booker. See if Bernie's saying Cory Booker. He's an interesting guy. He makes a powerful progressive case, but has these ties to Wall Street. Like, let's see what Bernie has to say about him. And what you have to like about Bernie is his refusal to play that game, his refusal to get what would unquestionably be, because I think when he answers this, he doesn't know it's going to make news. I really don't, because
of course not.
Yeah, but a Cory Booker answer is going to make news, and he'd get on TV and whatever. But no, but he is determined that these are the things we ought to be talking about.
But I also understand the urge to. I mean, this is a man who ran for president, right? And the urge is to say, "All right, it's over now. Who do you like next time? You're a guy who ran." I mean, I think that question goes to Mitt Romney all the time and Michael Dukakis all the time.
Sure,
and,
of course.
So,
I don't, and I understand it, but it is a nice example of what is wrong, of the direction journalism has gone, because that is the easiest story to write in the world. That's why Tim Russert asked it every single week.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to run? You're not going to run? Hey, and I would say that you're giving up an hour of airtime to, we had a debate where Mosul beat climate change 41-0. They talked about Mosul. Trump didn't even know where Mosul is, but he's talking about Mosul. The words climate change were never spoken.
He's not going to win.
Yeah, right. Those words were never spoken at the debate. There is a point where we have to, nothing we can do to assess it. We hope that journalists themselves assess the manner in which we cover politics. And Anna and you and I argue all the time, because she's like, I don't like the racehorse part of it. And at some point, like when it's October before November, the racehorse part of it is super interesting because the horses are coming down the stretch, right? But to her point, that's a racehorse question now. And I think it's I love that there's a guy who answers it the way Bernie Sanders answered it. I'll leave it at that.
I don't know why he ducks that question. Just tell me. I want to know. What do you
think about Cory Booker?
I agree with you guys, and I like the question. Both. I think there's a place to ask the question. I think if you're sitting with Bernie Sanders and you're trying to get him to talk about politics, that's a question you ask. The shame of it is that you don't have a room full of people who, after that question is asked, are not asking about climate change, or not asking about income inequality, and asking about the other. I think there's room for all of it, not exclusively that.
Like the great reporters, the guys who I admire, the guys who I think you admire too. But like recent in our lives, columnists anyway. Jack Germond would have said, who gives a shit about 2020?
Right.
Like what kind of freaking question is that? You want to start guys talking about 2020? And I just wish there was a little more cynicism for that than what know will be, what would be the headline story is not going to be about climate change. It's not going to be about income inequality or 30 to 40% unemployment in African American communities, or the fact that both candidates who wanted to do something about making college affordable lost, and there'll be no effort whatsoever to make college affordable. But what we'll get on the page, front page, is how are the Democrats coming back? Is it Elizabeth Warren? Is it Cory Booker? What does that mean for the party?
And now we don't know what Bernie thinks.
Right. It would be great. What I want is that somebody followed it up, like called his office. That was a good answer, but seriously, Cory Booker.
Right. What do you think, Cory Booker?
What I think a way he could have asked that question, which I wish he would have asked that question, which is what you almost just said, was going forward. What do you see? Do you really think Chuck Schumer is the person to lead this anti-establishment message you have? Do you really think it's Chuck Schumer who's going to deal with income inequality? And maybe that's what he could have said. Or do you think it would be Cory Booker who would be better? Who do you think should lead the Democrats right now? I think that's an appropriate question, don't you think?
Yes, because then he can answer about, I think the person who should lead the Democrats will take him in a direction where we talk about these issues. That's how he'd answer that, I presume, which would be an answer to that. But
he's already backed Keith Ellison for the DNC chair, and he would say that would probably be a more appropriate place to do those things and what have you. I don't know, but it doesn't look good. The Democrats don't look like they're really going to be able to pull themselves together. Does it? It doesn't.
No, I don't know. I have no idea. I disagree that it doesn't look that way. I have no clue what's going to happen. But what I read suggests that they're talking about it. What I read suggests a recognition, like Chuck Schumer or not, a recognition by Chuck Schumer, which I think is critical, of, oh, if I'm going to win, if I'm going to hold on to this caucus, I have to move left. That's where this caucus is. A very quick move to say Keith Ellison. Bernie Sanders said Keith Ellison. Bernie Sanders has power. Elizabeth Warren has power. That's where I recognize it. You know, will he betray that later? I have no idea. But he's a politician. And I think what gets left out all the time in conversations about the cravenness of politicians and their selling out to money is that they go where the power is. And why I thought it was critical that Hillary won was because then you have a chance to influence power. And it seemed clear to me that the Democratic caucus was moving left, and with effective leadership, could have been pushed left. To your point that it is much harder now for Democrats in the face of this loss to fall back on the way they've done things for the last 16 years. I will concede that. But I think there was a real chance to move the party left, and I think there still is that chance, and I think what Schumer and Reid did is a reflection of that.
Yeah, perfectly said. And also there's insurgency now. I mean, you have somebody like Keith Ellison who is trying to get that job. You have Tim Ryan running against Nancy Pelosi, an uphill battle, but one that was just given to without battle to Nancy Pelosi prior to that. He's not exactly the kind of person you'd think that would take the party to the left, but he is saying that we've become the party of the coasts, and we have to become the party of America, not just by talking about it. He probably won't beat Nancy Pelosi. She has a lot of power and a lot of loyalty, and she's created a lot of loyalty, and has been good on a lot of things. But you have Democrats sort of saying we do need to change things a little bit. And to Ben's point, that's exactly what will influence Chuck Schumer. Well, listen, there are a lot of different ways to look at Chuck Schumer. He's a senator from New York, and when you're a senator from New York, you're the senator of everyone in New York, not just Wall Street, but other people, but including Wall Street. But I also, you can't overstate the power of a senator, but you can show how the senator is moving his party or following his party to a way that the party on the whole thinks it should be going. And that's something that Chuck Schumer is totally capable of. Look what's happening with Donald Trump already. You see all these Republicans falling in line now. To what Ben just said, follow the power. Go to where the power is, because that's where you can influence. They can't influence by saying, you know what, I'm going to support Paul Ryan because he was my guy, or I was a Ted Cruz guy in the race and I'm going to stay with. No, you go to where the power is, and that's what attracts politicians all the time. I
think what what is missing, from the Democratic Party is that, they did make a conscious choice to move towards Wall Street and Silicon Valley and to sell out their base through trade deals like NAFTA and TPP. And I think that we need unions, right? I think we need to build that up again. Like I was talking about, I brought it up to Cenk, what if we tried to unionize the Walmart workers just in California? And what would that have, because it was like Martin Luther King had a lot more to do with things than politicians did in a sense, right? The society moved and then the politicians followed, I think is what happened.
In some cases in history, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's what we need to kind of do again, in a sense, because I keep getting disappointed by Democrats, right? And we're all going to keep getting disappointed by them. And Chuck Schumer, it was nice to see him. But what I remember about Chuck Schumer in 2014 was when he came out and said it was a mistake to do Obamacare. And he railed against the president about that. That was a mistake. People didn't want that. I was like, what? First of all, that's a victory. You guys won, and now you're apologizing for your goddamn victories. And then I played on my show for the last 3 weeks him saying their strategy was, for every blue-collar worker you lose in Pennsylvania, we're going to get 2 or 3 Republicans in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And he said you could do that in Ohio, and you can do that in Indiana, and you can do that in Illinois. And he was wrong about that. And so that's that thing that bothers me. It's like...
But there's the thing. He was wrong about that. He's allowed to be wrong, right? I mean, he's a senator. He's got a powerful position. He's allowed to be wrong. I completely agree with you about him with Obamacare. But on the whole, Chuck Schumer was a good congressman. He's been a good senator, and he has fought for many of the things that I am simpatico with, And so but he's allowed to be wrong, and I find that with Joe Biden supported a bankruptcy bill. I couldn't stand him for that one moment. But in the whole breadth of his political life, I've been behind him all the time. I can't just judge him on the bankruptcy bill. You know?
What is undeniable to me is that at least in these early, it's been, 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
13 days. There is a recognition of that. Whether the establishment old way of doing things wins, we don't know. But the pressure and the people who are getting on television are Bernie Sanders, Keith Ellison, and Elizabeth Warren. And literally everything out of Elizabeth Warren's mouth, I want to stand up and cheer. Literally, among them in the last 2 days was, enough of the whining. That's it. Let's go. We got work to do. So I'm literally following her lead and reading her reaction to things. And if she's satisfied, then the party's moving left because she's not going to drift center.
So what happened after the Tea Party response to George Bush being not a conservative in their face, right? He did the Medicare, he expanded it, unfunded, he did these foreign wars, and real conservatives and he ballooned the deficit, and real conservatives aren't supposed to be for that, so they did the Tea Party, right? And I think that's what the Democrats need. They need a Tea Party, because what happens, by the way, when people elected Trump, that was an anti-establishment, that was an anti-Republican Party vote. Right, that's what I think, and that's why he won the primaries. People were upset with the establishment. People were upset with establishment on the left too, and so I think that's what we need to get back to. Is an anti-establishment kind of a look. What do you?
I don't know. The establishment is strong and hard to overturn.
You're right. That's where the money
Democrats
is.
I understand, but Democrats have been left before. You can move them back left. There is not, until there's a serious, powerful third party, that's your best bet. The signs early that Chuck Schumer, Harry Reid, and Bernie Sanders got into leadership, and that those three people, and as far as I know, I don't know what Elizabeth Warren has said about Keith Ellison, but that those people are supporting Keith Ellison, that is to me a very good sign. Paul Begala, who is as much part of the establishment as there is, was quoting, I don't think it's complicated to win this thing, but the way you have to win it is to be authentic. And he said, look, we learned in this election that it's what Bill Clinton said. It's the economy, stupid. And that was right, because people believed that Bill Clinton was going to look out for them.
Yes.
Right? And then he, in a booming economy, whether it was malicious intent or indifference or selling out, ended up weakening the economic standing of many Americans who were loyal Democrats, who'd been union guys. NAFTA had unforeseen consequences that some people did foresee, but other people didn't, and it turned out the people who warned of the unforeseen consequences were more right than they were wrong. But that message, if it's the economy, stupid, is still the right message. That's what the Trump voters thought, was that this guy will help. That's what populism is. It's not. It's a lot of it is economic populism. I'm not talking about the 50 million racists who voted for
Yes,
him.
we're talking
about the 20 million, or maybe let's go with 30%.
Let's
go with 30. About, I don't know. Let's say
it's not about and it's about why
they
her
were
vote
unlikables.
I think it was about why her vote wasn't as big or enthusiastic as it could have been.
Yeah. Although she's going to end up enthusiasm. We're never going to rate it. She's going to end up pretty close to Obama's number. She's ahead right now. It's, again, worth mentioning every day, by 1.7 million votes. She's going to win by 2 million votes.
Already outdoing Kennedy, Nixon, Bush,
in percentage-wise victory. Yeah. So. And she's, at 63 million. Obama just got 65 million, right, last time.
Yeah.
Is that right?
She's close.
Yeah, she's close. So, and turnout went up from 2012. So there was, but of course, most of those extra votes went to Trump.
And Northern Virginia still hasn't come in.
But if you talk about the economy, Begala's right, if you talk about the economy in a meaningful way, and with meaningful policies, and meaningful reduction in the widening gap between rich and poor, and meaningful ways to energize the economy through building infrastructure and giving people jobs, and meaningful trade deals that do the best we can in a trade deal for workers, then I think you'll win. I think it's not that far away. But you can't simply, especially now after that line has been poisoned, you can't just say it. You have to do it. You have to advocate those policies. And my fear is that a traditional leadership at the DNC, and we've spent way too much time talking about the DNC in general, other than what it represents. No national committee in the history of national committees has been as powerful as the created power that the DNC had.
So true.
But nonetheless, it will represent the direction that the party goes in the immediate future until it perhaps is supplanted in 2018. So talk about the economy in a meaningful way that makes a difference in the lives of actual working people. And I think you're poised to win again. That does not address having, I think, 14 state legislatures to 33 controlled by the Republicans, or these staggering numbers where Democrats are lacking.
And secretaries of state, most of whom were Democrats, who have now lost in most of the races. That was a big takeaway from election night. We move on from the Democrats to the Republicans. Reince Priebus, who has that job, does he still have it? I guess he still has it as the head of the RNC, is now going to be the chief of staff for President Trump's White House. And it's so weird to say that. And he is now talking about the Muslim registry, something that has been talked about by this transition team and by this candidate in the waning days of his candidacy. Here is Reince Priebus talking about what that is, and we'll discuss exactly what he's meaning as he parses his words.
Can you equivocally rule out a registry for Muslims?
Look, I'm not going to rule out anything, but I wouldn't. We're not going to have a registry based on a religion.
So, I mean, it's the easiest question to answer with, yes, I can rule out a registry for Muslims. And he says, look, I'm not going to rule out anything.
And then says, we're not going to have a registry for Muslims, so I guess you're ruling that out.
Right.
Or are you?
Or are you? Or is it going to be people from different countries? All of whom happen to be Muslim. But it's not going to be based on religion. It's going to be based on the fact that you're from Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and...
right, that's what it sounds like. Yeah. That's what it sounds like. And it sounds like at the beginning, he was trying to remember what they were supposed to say about it. We're not going to rule out anything, but we're not going to have a registry for Muslims. Okay, that's what it is, because then we can still do it by country. Okay, I got it. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
And then he says, talking later, he said, certainly isn't a blanket for all people of that faith, but Mike Flynn is one of the most highly respected intelligence officers in America. Certainly no one can deny that. He's talking about General Michael Flynn, who said that Islam is a political ideology. And if you do it you don't do it by religion, but you do it by ideology, somehow it's going to be better. This is the scariest stuff that's come out of these, I think, early weeks of this transition team. Would anybody disagree with that?
That is scary, especially since there's a precedent for in our country that we did it to the Japanese, but Ronald Reagan cleared that up and he gave them all 20 grand. So
yeah,
they were able to get a Toyota. So
it was a K car, I think.
I think so, probably right back then. So yeah, this you know what? Yes. I think now, the country, when we did it before to the Japanese, I think the country would stand up and not let it happen again. What's happening in North Dakota right now would multiply it by 10 or wherever it would happen.
Hopefully by more than 10, because but really, I mean, there has to be a great civic involvement in that.
And so what someone said, there was I read an African American leader on Twitter. I don't know who. I can't remember exactly who it was. It was someone new to me, and they said they were talking about people. They said, the community leaders will stand up if Donald Trump tries to do this mass deportation, and we're not going to let it happen. And he tweeted out, where were the community leaders when Barack Obama's been doing this? So I hope that Donnie Trump wakes up people, and people won't let this kind of stuff happen. I don't think Americans will let this happen again. Yeah. Do you think so? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think it would be an ugly street fight, but I don't think so. And I think from both benign and aggressive ways. I think people registering who aren't Muslim and just flooding the registry would be part of what happens, and it's
probably what would happen.
Clever and effective. We don't have a ton of time left, but I think that there's one more Trump story that I want to get to, and that is his during this campaign, a report shows that Donald Trump registered 8 companies in Saudi Arabia during the election. What they do is, he said to me in Alabama, he was talking about the Saudis, he said, they buy apartments from me, they spend $40 million, $50 million, am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much. I would want to protect Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is going to have to help us economically. So he registered these companies in August of 2015. He launched his campaign in June of 2015. So just after he launched his campaign, he registered these companies. They're registered under names called the THC Jeddah Hotel and DT Jeddah Technical Services, right? So that is what Trump was doing while he was running his campaign. Now he's talking about even doing, continuing his business by having Jared Kushner and Ivanka in his meetings, and then in Argentina he was.
To me, this was bolder even than the.
This is but that's the setup to what I think is the most egregious. Which he was talking to Mauricio Macri, and Mauricio Macri is the president of Argentina. He was speaking to President-elect Trump, and he called to congratulate him as leaders do on his victory, and I hope say you lost the popular vote, and then he said so. Macri spoke to Jorge Lanata, who is a journalist in Argentina for La Nación, which is the leading newspaper of Argentina, or one of them. And he said Macri called him. This is the report. Macri called Trump. This still hasn't emerged, but Trump asked for them to authorize a building he's constructing in Buenos Aires. It wasn't just a geopolitical chat. So he had this first conversation with a world leader of, the second biggest second biggest economy in Latin America, and he's talking about his own building there as president-elect.
Yeah, it's staggering that you would. But nobody cares. Nobody seems to. Because of our comfort. We've reached a level of distrust of the mainstream media, at least on Trump's side, that side of the ledger. They just don't believe anything. It doesn't matter. I'm literally hearing the reaction to this story in my head, and it's like, guy's got a building.
Really good journalist, Jimmy. Really good journalists throughout this campaign on Twitter, which is the way that a lot of people get and give news. Would break stories like this, and the meme that was going around was "Nothing matters. Nothing matters." Like so and so's a big story, big story, big story. Nothing matters, right? How nothing mattered. This should be the biggest story that.
And we know now that those Trump bots were coming out and they were undermining these stories on a consistent basis. And it turns out they were much better organized in ways that we kept thinking they didn't have a ground game.
Right.
They had a pre-ground game that dismissed all of these stories, and now we got 61 million people who voted for Trump, 61 plus million. Who don't believe any story or just don't care about it.
And this is, I think, one of those stories that the people who you would want to change their mind, look, he's tricking you, look, where they go, fuck, I'd do that. I'd do the same thing. So that kind of shit they don't understand the ramifications of that. Really, they just go, why wouldn't you try to help yourself? I'll try to get a deal. Right, I think that's what people think.
Did you hear what he said to Theresa May? I didn't believe this story.
This is unbelievable.
I couldn't believe she's talking to Theresa May, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but maybe not.
Yes.
Next time you're in town, give me a call.
Give me a call.
Right. Call sometime if you're in town. That's just ridiculous and embarrassing. Right. But this is illegal. This is.
Well, so what has to happen, Michael? Right. So now Congress isn't going to investigate him. That's who had.
No, but Jeff Sessions will.
So this is like you have to have a congressional committee investigate.
He's not president yet. This is not the first time it's going to happen.
Right.
When it does happen and he is president, you would have to hope that people in Congress, inspectors general, whoever it is, I know you're giving me that's pie in the sky face.
No,
but that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to get pissed off about this when it matters that it's happening. Right this second, it doesn't really matter. He hasn't been sworn in, nothing.
Right.
He will be, and then all of these things, I suspect, that's where the media is going to start being heard. That's where Congress is going to start using the media to be heard. That would be what I would expect to have happen.
But I don't expect a Republican Congress to investigate him.
No, a Republican Congress won't unless they find that he is faltering everywhere and they see opportunity. And they're going to turn on their own because he's not one of their own. They don't. Many in Congress will not at a certain point view him as one of their own and say, hey, we got to,
Well, Donnie Tyner has never went out and raised money for them. He never, so they don't have that kind of history, right? So
well, it's not even that. He doesn't share their ideology. They all had to, they came to him most of them came to him very, very reluctantly, and he was their fourth or fifth choice. They worked their way from Bush to Rubio to Cruz to whoever, and then they ended up having to do it because they all fell in. We don't have any more time. Unfortunately, we had a good story about.
But just real quick, when in the 2018 elections, when the Democrats really show up and only lose 2 Senate seats, I think after that they'll really have the political power. Because many will think they'll lose 5 or 6. But they'll and then we'll be like, wow, Chuck Schumer really came through there.
Well, there'll be a couple that they come close in.
Yeah, totally. They'll come close. One of them won't be decided for days before we lose 2 and are down 54-46.
And I'll say it again, the Democrats should be pouring every fucking dollar they have into this Louisiana race. They have nothing to lose except the race. It's a runoff on December 10th, and they're 15 to 20 points behind, but they can make a stand there, and they should at least go down fighting, because I bet there are a lot. First of all, nobody votes in those runoffs in Louisiana on Saturdays, because the election's over to everyone in the world.
Who's down 15 to 20 points? Todd Young. He was down 15 to 20 points.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Todd Young was down 15 to 20 points. So I think that you can turn that sort of thing around because Trump won. And I think there are a lot of people that can't believe that happened. This seems like an opportunity to get a Democrat to galvanize them. So if you're in Louisiana or near Louisiana, you should go down there and work together. And he's not a Louisiana Democrat. This guy is actually a real progressive on a lot of issues. Don't look him up on the guns, but everything else, he really is. Michael Schor, Ben Mankiewicz, Jimmy Dore. We will be back here. Some people will be back here tomorrow, but Ben's going to be here for the second hour now, joined by...
Two other people. Grace and Francis.
Grace Baldridge, Francis Maxwell. Both of them. Neither of them are. Francis is a guy. Okay, thanks.
Hey, welcome back to the Young Turks second hour. We have Francis and Ben here to bring you some, I was going to say lighthearted news to end your Monday, but not really.
Not in this room.
Nope, not in this room, not today. But yeah, I guess we should probably jump right into it, unless there's any sort of segue from the first hour that you want to carry over, Ben.
No, it's a super depressing time, but it'll be over in
about
4 or 8 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll all be dead soon anyway, and really we're just dust floating through a planet in the universe.
Who had the last laugh when you used to make fun about me being from Scotland? I've got an outlet. How'd that feel?
No, I'd kill to be from Scotland right now. Yeah, what are you talking about? Yeah.
That used to be the brunt of Ben's insults.
Totally.
Before a Donald Trump presidency.
Now he makes fun of me for being from America.
And you just go, yep, you went.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Indeed they have.
Must be nice. I hadn't thought about that, Francis. You and I have a total out. If we want, Belgium, way more functioning.
Worth mentioning in the first hour, but new numbers out today. 1,711,000 votes. That's how far ahead Hillary Clinton is. 1.71 million.
It's so ironic. The man who claimed the system is rigged relied on the system to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, headed for 2 million.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. So, Richard Spencer, the president of the National Policy Institute and a alt-right ideologue, spoke at a conference and sort of outlined the alt-right movement and their involvement with the Donald Trump presidency. Let's take a look at some of the videos about what they were speaking about this past Saturday.
The disgraceful things about the left is that they seem to want more Muslim immigration. They want that way more than they're worried about any downside and any concern to especially to women. Let's face it, there's these rape gangs and everything else. Just Islamic law. Women really not having control of their lives, and so that it's amazing that these leftists want this disease coming into our society really more than they want to protect themselves.
And my question is this. A lot of minority groups in this country, America is a multicultural country, are very, very afraid for their rights and security in the wake of a Trump election. And so I want to know exactly what are you calling for from a Trump administration for him to do with undocumented immigrant populations, children of undocumented immigrant populations, Muslim Americans right now who are terrified of being asked to put their name on a registry. What are you calling for him to do, and how is it remotely ethical or constitutional?
Loaded question. In terms of undocumented immigrants and their children, they've got to go home. And they can go home again. They can reconnect with their real identity, which is not 21st century America.
So those are just some clips that I pulled from this conference, but to give you a little bit more context about what they were talking about and what the conference was sort of outlining, America, he said, belonged to white people whom he called the children of the sun, a race of conquerors and creators who had been marginalized, but now in the era of President-elect Donald Trump were awakening to their own identity. Now, the reason why this is making headlines is because as he finished, several audience members had their arms outstretched in a Nazi salute. When Mr. Spencer, or perhaps another person standing near him at the front of the room, it was not clear who, shouted, "Heil the people, Heil victory," the room shouted back. And this is also after 11 hours of speeches and panel discussions, so this really dragged on. But what is the alt-right's connection to the Donald Trump presidency? So they actually did address this. Richard Spencer says, quote, "I do think we have a psychic connection, or can you say a deeper connection with Donald Trump in a way that we simply do not have with most Republicans. White identity," he said, "is at the core of both the alt-right movement and the Trump movement, even if most voters for Mr. Trump aren't willing to articulate it as such," which I thought was kind of an interesting point to end on, because it addresses what I know we've talked about before, is that a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump might not identify themselves as white supremacists. In fact, they would reject that sort of ideology. But here we are hearing from the head of the alt-right, Richard Spencer, the president of the National Policy Institute, that indeed, if you voted for Trump, you do have something in common with these people. Would you agree with that, Francis?
Yeah, I think so. It's not whether they want to acknowledge that they have something in common or not. They do. They both voted for a candidate that was endorsed by the KKK, that was endorsed by alt-right members of society that uphold values of white supremacy. That's just the way it works. That's it. Whether you believe or not that these are values that you hold true to you, and this is where I've been going back and forth with a lot of liberal friends of mine and those in other sources, where I say that I'm not going to paint everyone with the same brush, but I'm, rather than basically calling them this and saying you are racist, you are sexist, you are xenophobe, I don't think we get anywhere, because we did it for 12 months and it gave us Donald Trump. So rather than that, now the only way I see sort of bridges being built is if I hold them accountable. So if you say this is not what you support, because the only way that this sort of change and any sort of middle ground comes to fruition is if they denounce this. This is not what we support, because I think it happens on the grassroots, like ground level. I think the change that we need to kind of be pushed forward, it's not going to happen from Donald Trump. It's not going to come out and denounce this. He'll maybe send it in a tweet at 3 a.m. Suddenly that's big enough. No, it's going to happen from those 46% of America is not this. I just cannot bring myself to believe that. So it's going to happen with those people that maybe have voted for whatever motive they believe. They need to stand against this and ensure that that's not something that they uphold as part of their party's values, because I think it's very easy to taint them all with the same brush and class them all as sexist and racists, Donald Trump voters, everyone else, and shame them. But I just don't agree that that's gotten us anywhere. I feel like that's gotten us Donald Trump. So rather than continue to do so, which again, it's valid in a lot of cases, because there's a lot of people that are emboldened by Donald Trump and are uplifted and feel like they now resonate again. They don't. David Dukes of the world, those people are the scum of the earth. But to make sure that, to go around and say that everyone is them, I just don't think it gets us anywhere.
Well, what is the effect of the alt-right now going mainstream? Because this was a major conference that they were holding. People really are now giving the alt-right, Richard Spencer and his peers, the airtime that they didn't have before. They didn't have 12 months ago, because now people are realizing, journalists are realizing that they have a platform. Is that responsible journalism, though? I mean, should we be even listening to what they have to say? Is it just to report on it, you know?
We should be listening to what they have to say, because we ought to be monitoring what they're saying.
I agree.
We got to pay very close attention to what they have to say, and we got to pay very close attention to how much of their ideology is implemented into a Trump administration. And when we consider that the chief policy advisors, Donald Trump is Steve Bannon, the editor-in-chief of Breitbart, which is the gospel publication, to the extent that something on the internet is published, of the alt-right. They have a voice in the White House.
Yeah.
I agree with Francis. We can't. I mean, I know Trump voters. In my extended family, they're not racist, right? And it wasn't their motivation. Their motivation was their Republican. First of all, you got to remember, a lot of Republicans just came home. It was the Republican nominee. They voted for the Republican nominee because that's what they do all the time. So there's some of that. Obviously, some of the economic populism, in a sense that the Democrats abandoned them, affected plenty of voters. Donald Trump, if he got creamed, was always going to get 53 million votes. He could have been humiliated, and 53 million Americans were going to vote for him no matter what. But there is a significant percentage that feels that, and it goes back to Fox News saying there's a war on Christmas, this notion that the alt-right has, that somehow, like he says it right here, you read it, Grace, children of the sun, a race of conquerors and creators who had been marginalized. How are white people in the United States of America been marginalized? In what possible way have white people, in what possible way is there a war on Christmas? What possible way for Laura Ingraham, who may be White House press secretary, when the cast of Hamilton criticized Mike Pence, and she responded by suggesting that what if Hillary had won and a white Christian had said they're afraid? The media would have been all, well, but white Christians aren't in danger. There is no threat. And, by the way, Hillary Clinton would have said, I hear your concerns. You have nothing to worry about. I'm president for everybody, right? But we ought to pay unbelievably close attention. And we also ought to remember that when we call them the alt-right, we are just merely accepting their rebrand.
Yeah. Right.
They're white supremacists in suits. Mm-hmm. And they all look like Lego figures.
And by the way, the other point is that you're right, is like, if Hillary Clinton won, they're still having this rally. They're having this to how do we push forward. How do we continue to add voices? Like, they're going to have this no matter what. It's just there won't be as many cameras there because now they feel emboldened. Now they feel like their voice matters.
There was international media covering this conference.
Of course it is. And it's because everyone there's a lot of people that are worried, and rightfully so, because Donald Trump, whether his supporters want to believe it or not, he's invited them in. They are now, and this is the only comparison I've made to a lot of Trump voters that I'm close with, is that, say, for instance, you decide to host a college party and you invite a bunch of people over, and people that you invite to your house commit atrocities. You might not believe what they're doing, but you invited them in, so it's your obligation to condemn that. It might not be what you believe if someone does something in your house, but if you invited them to that party, then you're responsible for what goes on in your house. So you need to, in a way, make sure that you push across that you're condemning this and this isn't what you voted and supported for. And to go back to what Ben said, I think that's one of the most valid points, and I've not heard it being stated enough, because again, it's valid. I'm not a person that's going to feel directly threatened by a Trump presidency. That's just, I have to state that out there. I'm an immigrant, yes, but I'm the type of immigrant that Donald Trump's not going to worry about. I'm white, and I have some sort of obligation to be here at the moment. Mm-hmm. And that's where it changes for a lot of people. But that being said, it's a lot easier to say that a lot of people are racist, sexist, this and this, when you got to think about what this country puts forward in terms of political values. You're either right or you're left. You're in the middle, you're going to get lost in translation. But you're raised, like, conservative values are so enriched with Christian values that you're raised in a certain way. So when it comes to some candidate that you've spent, in their view, 4 to 8 years looking at a president that they don't believe upholds their values, it's like a religion to them. So when it comes to the vote, it's like saying you have to switch from being Catholic to another form of religion. And some people, it's not as easy to do so, even if that candidate they're looking at is such a horrible candidate. They're not going to see it for what other people are going to see it, because they're so engraved in this tradition that has become American politics, because you guys don't have unbiased news sources. Everything they take is Fox or it's CNN.
Well, on television.
In television. I mean, yeah, we are, of course. Well so I wouldn't say we're unbiased.
Well, there are.
But I try my best to be as logical as I can, because I came from a background of BBC, which is funded by a lot of corporations. I get it. But I love, in the UK, I really appreciate how a lot of the time we give news and we bring in correspondents that come in, share their views, but they're immediately categorized as they are a right-wing correspondent. They're a left-wing correspondent. Mm-hmm. Here, Fox News is seen as a true news source. This is what happened. They did it. And everyone's like, you're right, they did it. I can't argue back. They did it.
I think that examining the alt-right phenomena has been a little bit interesting for me in particular because I am not in the base that they would appeal to at all. So I truly feel like I'm watching it as though I'm an alien because I am a woman. And we didn't include any of these video clips, but I'd encourage you to look them up about Richard Spencer talking about the role of women in the alt-right base and how they are reaching out to women and what they offer women. And a lot of what he said was motherhood. It just, that's the gift that women bring to the world is that they can only be mothers, or not that they can only be mothers, but only women can be mothers, and how beautiful that is. And I was, just thinking about that, and I know that a lot of alt-right pundits or ideologues don't believe in lesbianism, which I do believe in it a lot. And so I'm watching this, and I'm hearing how separatist they are, and it's really strange for me to find that it is appealing to so many people that must feel, I guess, extremely cast out. That it's established this base is so strange to me because it doesn't appeal to me at all in the least. But they really are cultivating this amazing phenomena that now we have to report on. But so much of what they are saying, I don't want to legitimize with coverage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's hard to know exactly how to handle it. Because again, they're alt-right. They're white supremacists dressed up. That's their name, alt-right. I don't know whether you're much of a sports fan. I know Francis is, but part of why this works is that no matter what you are in sports, right, a way to motivate your team is to say, and we've seen it in every sport, college, professional, is to say, nobody believed in us, but we came together. The world was against us. Everybody thought we were losers, and look what we did. Even frequently when you're like, no, everybody, even when great teams do it, like Cavaliers, nobody believes in us. Everybody believed in you. What are you talking about? Literally. And so these guys, you need to feel victimized, and they have managed to turn that desire to be victimized into something that resonates with people. And that's how you get people in. People who wouldn't normally walk down the street and think, ugh, immigrant, right? But you think your life's not going well, you don't have a good job, you haven't gotten ahead, you're underachieving, your parents did better. Somebody tells you, man, the system's rigged against you. It's for the girls and the blacks and the immigrants, and it's not for you.
Right, and the gender roles, and also like where the race separatism. It's just the way that they are overtly preaching their message is something I feel is just absolutely.
They've been doing it.
They've been doing it, but the way that it's being covered and legitimized and validated in the mainstream media.
They've been emboldened. I mean, he said, Richard Spencer said this week, we may not be the establishment, but we should start acting like it now.
So here's the harsh reality, right? Is what you asked a great question, which is about you almost don't feel right covering it, right? Because you're almost giving more voice to it, and I understand that. But what we need to understand, Grace, is that for 12 months we ridiculed a lot of people who were kind of in limbo whether they were going to go Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and those that kind of maybe showed some signs leaning towards Donald Trump, we labeled them as them. And what that does is that means that we focus nothing but our attention on the worst of that fan base and the worst of those followers, and started categorizing them in a way that they were immediately pushed towards Donald Trump. We did nothing but push them towards it. And we continued. Every news source was furthering looking at all the atrocities that were committed, which, by the way, a lot of them were merited. You have to look into how despicable some of these people are. But it wasn't all of them. And I felt that we just completely missed what our job was as people on the left, was to ask why. Like, you are leaning towards Donald Trump? Really? Why? Explain. And then I can use my educational tools and my ability to debate to try and sway you. But instead, we didn't. We lost the art of debating that, and instead, we focused all of our coverage on the extreme forms of Trump's protesters, the extreme forms of Trump's fans, so that these people were given more of a voice. They were given a voice as soon as he announced his candidacy. And it only continued and grew further. And then when he came in to be president, Ben's right as well. We now need to actually pay attention, because we need to keep our ear to the ground and make sure that they're not going to push anything even further. Like when you get Steve Bannon now going to be directly advising the president, and he's got his ear to the alt-right movement as well. We're not left with the choice. We need to actually listen in to see.
I would say we don't really need to keep our ear to the ground. They're yelling. I
mean,
they are.
Yeah,
you can just poke your head outside and you'll hear them.
Yeah. So it's kind of that catch-22.
Real quick, just something to remember, people, and I love this stat, and I don't say it. You can interpret it any way you like.
Okay.
But it's interesting. If you, I read it in 538. So if you take one voter out of 100 in every state, one Trump voter, and turn them around, right, convinced them that it was Hillary. 1 out of 100 Trump voters in every state. Then you move the polls 2 points. She's going to win by 1.5. Then the poll would be 3.5. She'd have won, and the polls would have been right, and no, we would not be having any of these conversations. So, like, the margins are so unbelievably thin. If there is one benefit, and it's not worth it, of Trump winning, it's that we are at least having these conversations. To all the people who said lesser of two evils and who argued that the Hillary loss will galvanize the left, I disagreed with them. I think it was a foolish, politically insane, inept, unthought out argument. But they are right about one thing, is that if she'd won, and it took so little for her to win, one person, you don't even have to do it in every state, but if you did it in every state, we'd get to that margin. That at least now we're talking about these guys, right? At least now we have a recognition. There is, as Jimmy Dore says, a face that we can point to, an evil face that we can point to and recognize. But I totally agree with you that we can't marginalize every Trump voter because plenty of them are good people who simply hated Hillary Clinton or didn't think or thought Democrats had completely sort of abandoned them economically.
Yeah, and it's most like a lot of the time when we report on these, it's almost like to a lot of people who maybe don't go and get their sources from many different subjects, they're thinking, oh my God, this is growing. All these people are joining together. They're all doing it. They've always been those type of people. They've always been there, but they now just feel emboldened. That's the way they feel that they can get away with it, yelling it in the streets, and they can get away with it doing these things.
Most importantly, they have a seat at the table, and that is alarming.
That's what the most alarming thing is now. It's now not preventative. It's worse.
All right, let's move on to something that really, honestly, gives voice to what you were just saying, Francis.
Yeah.
So an Arab American Uber driver was harassed in Astoria, Queens. Fortunately, he did capture it on video. Let's take a look. We don't have that video, but look forward to it in post. I'll just read you a little bit about what he was saying, just in case you guys didn't get a chance to look at it. So this guy was yelling at the Uber driver from a neighboring car. They were both in cars, and he was saying, quote, Trump is president, so you can, there's a lot of swear words. I'm just going to edit those out because they're edited out from the Washington Post. Trump is president, expletive. You can kiss your visa goodbye, scumbag. They'll deport you soon. Don't worry, you expletive terrorist. So probably not the best encounter that the man had that day. So the recipient of the verbal attacks was Chris Cody's Uber driver. Cody told the Washington Post the incident on Crescent Street in the Astoria neighborhood in Queens happened Thursday morning, just before the Uber driver picked up Cody in Manhattan. And because Cody was able to speak Arabic, he got into a little bit of a conversation, and his Uber driver said, man, I just had the worst incident right before I picked you up. And Cody said what happened, and he showed him the video. And Cody said that Mohammed was initially hesitant, but that he was able to persuade him to send the video to him so Cody could share it on social media. He said Mohammed was unsure about reporting the incident to police and does not want his full name to be known, which is why we're hearing about the story from a secondhand person. Now, Cody shared the video on Facebook, and it really went viral. In fact, the New York State Senator Michael Gianaris actually responded to it, just saying that in this community we don't tolerate that sort of thing. So he has spoken out. That's how viral this story went. And it's just worth noting before we get into the discussion that reports of intimidation and harassments have spiked since Election Day. The Southern Poverty Law Center has tallied 701 such incidents as of Friday, the Hate Watch group. However, cautions that not all incidents have direct references to Trump, and not every report could be independently verified. This group has tracked 27 anti-Trump incidents as of Friday. So let's just be aware of what's going on. But obviously there's so much unrest that we are seeing. I think it's good whenever this stuff comes out that it's documented. I think that's really important. So I think that's great of Mohammed. But obviously he didn't even want his name to be known. He was hesitant to even let the story get out there. This is such a scary time for a lot of people. When I look at stories like this, I always sort of ask myself, what would I have done in this situation? Were I witness to the actual incident, or were I his next Uber passenger? And I'm wondering, you, Ben, do you think about that sort of thing? I just don't know how we're supposed to handle that.
I think this guy, who I guess spoke Arabic too,
yes, he did.
The Chris Cody, did exactly the right thing, which is sort of, talk to the guy. And you mentioned he spoke Arabic. So they were, he was able to ease his mind and get a hold of the tape and then share it. And that's the best way to do it. It's just, it's an alarming time already. It's potentially more alarming. And when the cast of Hamilton, the story we did in the first hour, when they speak out, and Mike Pence, by and large, handled the situation well. He was fine.
He was fine, yeah.
But when the president-elect and his minions, from Newt Gingrich to Laura Ingraham, all straight down the line, to Michelle Malkin, when they condemn what the cast of Hamilton did and talk about it, and Trump says it's hostile. Trump and Gingrich talked about it was hostile. There literally was nothing, it was anti-hostile. There was booing, and the cast said, stop booing. And they referred to Pence as sir and expressed their concerns and said, hope that he would address it and hear them. I literally don't know how it could be more respectful. You could make an argument that it was the wrong place. Some people, even on the left, are making it that it was the wrong place. I don't think those people were going to be in Mike Pence's presence any other time, so it strikes me as the right place. But what it was definitely not was hostile. And when Trump calls it hostile, and then there's this cacophony of voices saying it's hostile, you were sending a message to the guy who pulled up next to Mohammed that it's okay to say these things. That is, at no point did Trump say, could have said, hey, I heard that. We heard what you said to Mike Pence. I just want to reassure people I'm president for all Americans. That's it. And I'll be a very good president. I'll be the very best president for all Americans.
He could have even trumped it up. He could have been like,
that's right.
I'll be so great for all people, so great.
Right. That's all you got to say, and then it really kind of isn't a story.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, you suggest, and I go back and forth as to whether this Hamilton story is a sort of a trivial little pop culture one-off, right? Or whether it is representative of how these guys are going to react to dissent.
Yeah.
And I fear that it's the latter.
So, Francis, do you agree that the actions of, let's say Donald Trump and his, lackeys, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, I guess cabinet, sure, is emboldening these people, or is it just sort of, is there really not a direct causality there? Because he did say on camera, stop it, if people are being violent, people are acting out, stop it. He said it directly into the camera. Do you think that is going very far, or are people responding directly to the tone that Donald Trump has set as president-elect?
Those people probably never even, they blurred that out. They heard what they had to hear, which was the things he was saying during his campaign. And then once he got elected, they probably haven't even listened to him after they got elected. They just felt like, we won, we got it. Now we can be, and I'm not saying the majority, because by the way, don't take my rationality when it comes to all Trump fans as me not going to condemn this bullshit, because this is what you have to condemn. And it's not, this is what I keep saying, is that it's not that me condemning it is painting everyone with a bold brush that this is all Trump fans. No, it's me condemning it with the hope that some people that I know and close to me that are Trump fans will condemn it as well. Because that's where I think this change comes. It's not going to come from Donald Trump or his cronies or anyone in his cabinet condemning this. People calling out there, Donald Trump needs to denounce this. What is that going to do? These people have already got all the involvement they need. They've already felt the power that they have suddenly got their voice in this world, and that they are going to be that force that just continues to be the ultimate force of everyone else. So what I'm saying is that there's one thing absolutely condemning this and highlighting, just as you said, even further, 67% hate crimes have increased against anti-Muslim hate crimes have increased. In 2014, 2015, hate crimes in general were up by 7%, according to the FBI. These are simple facts. People are feeling that they can voice their hatred more often now because of Donald Trump. That's not even arguable. I'm not going to listen to your argument if you tell me that Donald Trump hasn't allowed for this spike. But it doesn't get us anywhere when I say to people that are all Trump fans, you caused this. Because therefore, the chances of them, in the next time that they encounter something like this, or they maybe witness it, the chances of them speaking out and being like, hey, that's not what my party represents. I don't stand for that, which you never know, could influence a mind or two, are very, very small. So I just don't see the sense of going that back and forth, because we see at the moment, something happens there at Hamilton. Everyone on the left is saying that this is absolutely right, condemning Mike Pence, and I thought they handled the situation very well. The Hamilton cast spoke so eloquently, and they handled it in the most, I don't think you could put it in perspective how good they did it in comparison to how other people have protested. But Donald Trump immediately sides with the other side of it, there's this immediate divide. There's no one in the middle trying to build that bridge. There's no one trying to connect it.
So let's talk a little bit about the Trump voters that you referenced, Francis. The Trump voters that, they're not racist. We know them. They're friends of the family. They don't mean this. They don't, yes, they aligned with a president that is endorsed by the KKK, but they're not that way. Do you think that when they hear stories like this, or when they see stories like this, they see these videos that are circulating on Facebook that do go viral, do you think it gives them pause? Do you think it causes them to reflect on their vote, or is it just sort of water under the bridge? Well, the election's over, whatever. I mean, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if these people that are sort of that were sort of the not the huge Trump supporters, but the ones that did cast their vote for him. Do you think they think about the sort of the causality here?
Truthfully, if you want my answer, I don't even think they might want to take a pause, but I don't think they would even voice. Most of them that I know wouldn't even voice that this maybe came of concern to them voting for Trump, because a lot of them that I knew never even voiced that they voted for Trump. No one really knew. They were very quiet about it because they were scared that they'd be shamed at even voicing their concern.
Would they intervene if they were to witness this?
If they were to witness, I would really hope so.
That's, I think, the question. We need to talk about human decency here.
Yeah, of course. And I would hope that they would. And I feel like it would be my job, and if I understood that they were looking to swing towards a Trump vote, this is before the election, that I would look at cases like this, which happened before Trump was elected, to say this is what your candidate is going to uphold. Like, these people are going to uphold his values and speak out as if they were him doing this. And I would try to sway it as like, here's the statistics, here's the rise in hate crime. I know you may feel that economically you're going to be better off with this. And I would try, in an educational sense, to try and talk them out of it, because that's the way I've been taught here. I've embraced so many different cultures and I try to understand. But again, Grace, we're talking about people here in Los Angeles that are mixed in the different cultures. Like, if you're going to speak to someone in Wisconsin or someone in Ohio who thinks that immigrants are going to steal all their jobs and have probably never even run into it.
This happened in New York City.
Exactly. That's where it was surprising to me. It's going to happen all over. There's going to be people that are going to take this example as a means to say, I can say and do what I want because Trump's my president and I'm going to do these things. But it's not just on us on the left to condemn it. I think it's, again, I keep saying it, if there's people out there that are tired of being shamed for voting for Donald Trump, speak out against this.
Yeah,
I
completely agree.
Speak out against this.
If we're wrong about Donald Trump, then the Trump voters that do not buy into the xenophobia, among other things, among so many other terrible things, need to be the ones to speak out. And that's what we're not seeing. And that's what makes me so frustrated. Because again, like I said at the top of the story, I imagined what would I do if I was put in this position? How would I act? How would I respond? How would I comfort this person? Mm-hmm. And I just hope that the people that did vote for Donald Trump, that sort of fall into the category that you were alluding to, would also ask themselves those same questions. How would I respond? I voted for Trump, but I don't have hate in my heart.
Yeah.
Because I know that there are people that truly believe that.
The reason why I'm a little different on this, because I like that we're having this back and forth, because this is what was needed, right? The reason I'm indifferent to this is because I look back in the last 12 months, and these examples came up before Trump was president, and what did we do? How did we handle these situations? Rather than being like, see, this is maybe what a Donald Trump presidency is going to look like, or this is what's going to happen. Instead, what did we do? And I'm not saying we in terms of everyone, there might be people that are different, but more often than not, we said, this is what you are if you vote for Donald Trump. This right here, you are this, whether you speak out or not, this is you. And that is it. We had a role to play in this, and we relied on Hillary being the better of two evils, which simply was not good enough. And rather than take accountability for that and maybe look, as well as we protest against Donald Trump, I haven't seen anywhere near enough protest towards the DNC to make me feel comfortable that we really realize how much we played a role in this as well. And that is going to take some understanding, rather than the same thing happens with the Kanye West example, right? While I think that Kanye was really stupid in his comments and so oblivious and naive.
Which ones?
On Twitter, on all of them, but this is the thing. But on Twitter, most people condemned him for the simple statement that he would have voted for Trump. No one really condemned him for the fact that he didn't vote, for one, so you voice your concern for 40 minutes, but you don't think it's important enough to vote, you're immediately redundant in that case. Not the fact that he said that racism has to have the least focus on it. There was some, but not enough. Everyone just jumped on the fact that he mentioned Trump, directly representing the way we treated people who showed some sort of allegiance to Trump for the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And we haven't learned a lesson. We keep doing it.
I don't know, Francis. I think it's more complicated than that. I hear you. We should,
all right.
We pointing at people and saying racist, I agree with you on. But it was tricky to figure out how to cover this guy. And he, as a society, as the mainstream media, did not know how to cover him. And the stories did not land. the well-covered stories, the well-thought-out stories. I mean, today you see, and he's on the phone with the president of Argentina. He's like, "Hey, make sure you get my building built." I mean, he's literally asking in a congratulatory call. He's doing business, and I'm certain that literally 62 million people who voted for him are like, Jimmy said this during the first hour. They'd be like, "Yeah, that's what I'd do." Like, it's like we've lost a sense of outrage because he kept eclipsing it. So I don't know. I hear you. I don't want to call people out. I do not want to point fingers and say racist because I need, first of all, just at some point we need 13 to 17 million of those people to come back, right? And I'm sure they're reachable. I'm certain they're reachable. But this guy, man, this is a world that you want to, as a parent. I hate using these arguments because it seems to exclude you guys, and I don't mean to at all. But you'll be fine. You'll probably be fine. But I don't know. I got it. Your orientation bothers people, right?
Yeah, people hate it.
Right, people hate it. A little bit, I guess, the alt-right. The degree to which, today, Richard Spencer, in our first story, today there's a thing going around Twitter now because he's wondering if Jews really are people. Literally, really, right? So, but it seems so stupid that I can't even work any outrage up about that. What I don't want is my daughter to grow up in a place where it becomes okay for other 6 and 7-year-olds to use the N-word, or more likely to just disparage Mexicans or disparage immigrants, or to feel like you're better because you're white. And I'm not certain of that. I'm not certain at all that we haven't created, she's probably okay in Southern California. But man, it's like, we're not just going to see 711 more incidents that the Southern Poverty Law Center cheated in a short period of time. Steve Bannon is in the White House. Mike Flynn is going to be the National Security Advisor. He talks like a barbarian from the 17th century, right? To say nothing of the, a guy who doesn't believe in climate change directing the EPA transition, to all the other crazy hires that this guy is going to make on a consistent basis that is going to tell people that it is okay in subtle ways and direct ways to sort of doubt facts, presume facts and evidence aren't in evidence or aren't facts, and to treat people who aren't like them as if they're less than, and to do it out in the open and boldly. And we unleashed that. And I am largely clueless at this point how to handle that.
Yeah. So my last rebuttal for you on that is, so while I agree with everything you're saying, so what my confusion is, to what point on my point do you not agree with? Because I think that we, for 12 months, rather than having the discussion, we lost the art of asking why people would consider voting for Donald Trump, and just assumed that they were voting for him to represent the worst of his rhetoric.
About that, we largely agree. I don't know that we could have stopped it by asking why.
I think a lot of people, you just said yourself, one person out of every state, and you all of a sudden switched to vote.
I don't know. I don't know what it would have done. I don't know what we would have done. I didn't know what to do then. To look back now and think we clearly should have done it differently. I mostly think we should have presented an economic alternative that resonated with people, and then it still would have been awful because he still would have gotten 57 million votes.
Yeah.
But he would have lost.
Yeah, we got to move on, though. We got to move on, guys. All right. Oh, man. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you about why coming out is even harder than it used to be in Texas. Thanks. Welcome back to the Young Turks here on the second hour. Francis and Ben.
Somebody tweeted, "What am I doodling?" I doodle a lot.
Oh man, do you doodle?
It's my daughter's name.
Yeah, you draw a lot of faces.
I draw a lot of faces that are essentially me.
Do you know what I was thinking? I was like, if I was ever tripping and I were to see that paper with all the faces on that, oh my God. Look at, that's truly terrifying. Look at all those faces.
Yeah, I always draw guys like with scruff and glasses, and I draw like a fire truck, like a 5-year-old. They're horrible. Sometimes I accidentally draw something when
do they help you focus?
I don't know. I'm super fidgety, and I've been extra fidgety during this election because I don't want to get worked up. I don't want to yell at people. I mean, friendships has been fractured a little bit, and I hate that, but it happened, and I don't want that to happen. There wasn't anything close to that. I don't even know if I disagree with that. I can't even remember.
If you got physical, I'd win anyway.
So I think it sort of keeps me.
You click the nickels as well.
I copy all the time. Yeah.
I do that as well. But yeah, we're going to be jumping in the second hour. We're going to talk a little bit about why coming out is going to be a little bit more involved in the state of Texas, and then also a little bit about Ashton Kutcher and Airbnb.
Because
and
I just want to think it's good because as I recall, coming out in Texas, super easy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so easy that they were like, let's just give them a little hurdle.
Let's just make it a little difficult.
Yeah, everyone's doing it. It's so cool here.
I'm often thinking, man, I wish I were gay and living in rural Texas.
But yeah, so let's jump right in. Okay. Connie Burton, a Texas Tea Party state senator, has proposed a bill that would effectively say that it is okay for parents to find out the sexual orientation or gender expression or identity of their child without the consent of their child. Let me break down a little bit more about what is going on in Senate Bill 242. So according to Logo, Burton has just filed Senate Bill 242, which mandates disciplinary action against any school employee who does not disclose the sexual and or gender identity of students to their parents. She was moved to draft this bill after her hometown of Fort Worth modified school guidelines to further protect transgender students. Faculty would no longer be permitted to reveal a student's gender identity to their parents without their explicit permission. Now, to justify this, she says, quote, "My legislation will make it expressly against state law for a district to add policies designed to undermine a parent's right to know. No parent in Texas should ever have to fight for a basic right to matter in their child's life again." Now, something I do want to point out is that also in this sort of open letter that she says that a parent has a right to a full and total information on their child's academic performance, physical, mental, emotional health, and more. So, as a huge gay person, I do not like mental and emotional and physical health being a part of that equation. I totally am for, like, when I was looking at physical, I'm wanting, like, if this kid is healthy, if the teachers are noticing that maybe they're using, or I don't know, maybe they have an eating disorder or something, you know, going on with their health, or if they're struggling with friendships or whatnot, or their academic performance is suffering. I'm all for that. But that is not what what sexuality is. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And I feel like that's something that more and more I'm having to sort of justify, that sexuality and gender identity are different things. Like, you can be, you know, a transgender lesbian, and like you could also be a transgender straight person. Like, it's not the same, and I don't like how it's getting very convoluted in actual state legislature. Yeah. Like, that's not okay. You need to know the language before you can be proposing bills. And it makes me really worried.
I'm going to guess that Connie with a K, Burton.
She's not familiar with it.
My heart goes out to these, you know, the LGBTQ kids in Texas now, because as if, again, I think you make a great point, as if it wasn't hard enough to come out. And I know that I live in a wonderful bubble. I live in West Hollywood. Being super gay is not a problem for me, aside from, you know, just...
Is there a difference between gay and super gay?
No, but I'm super gay, though. Like, that's the difference, is that, look, when I say super gay, I mean that sometimes I've come into the office and shared an outfit with Hassan. That's super gay. Like, that's a new level. So I do want to get a reaction from you guys, but I will say I condemn this so hard. Yeah. And it just, my bleeding emotional lesbian heart for those baby gays and the LGBTQ community in Texas. I really hope that they can rally together and implement some action against this legislation.
So I completely want to be as open as I can with my thoughts on this, and I want you to just tell me if I'm off base with what I'm assuming is the role of the parent here. Not to trigger you. I completely condemn this.
Should I go to my safe space?
No.
Okay.
I want to condemn this because I think it's so awful that, for one, right, I feel that if you are a parent and you haven't cultivated a relationship with your child to let them know that you love them no matter what, then you should, if you haven't done that and they go forward and they express something that is of concern to them, or they want to express their sexuality to a teacher and they don't run that through you, then I feel that is just because you haven't maybe made them feel that they can be as comfortable coming to you with anything. And therefore, that trust between the teacher and student is sacred. And I think it's so valuable. There's so many teachers in my life that have made such a huge impact to me. And I used to tell them things that I wouldn't tell my parents, not because I didn't trust my parents, just because I felt that
It's a
level of
different
trust. Yeah, it's a
relationship.
different relationship. But I feel like when it comes to sexuality, and I may be off again, I feel like your parents should be one of the first people you should be going and speaking to if you feel so comfortable with them. So I feel that in this situation, she's making it seem, this legislator is making it seem like, oh, the parents are the really ones. They're being hard done by because this kid isn't going back and telling them they should be told because this is on them to fix it. No, it's not. If this child feels that he or she cannot go to his or her parents, and feel like they could be comfortable telling them this, then maybe there's something that's not right there for them and they don't feel as comfortable. So I think, as you mentioned, it's already very hard in this climate, a lot harder than it really should be. That's what breaks my heart, is we've made so much strides as a society, but unfortunately with the current epidemic that's going on with orange skin and a horrible hairdo, people are going to feel like they could have this sort of view to push us back and be like, nah, see, this is a problem. We don't want this. So we want the parents to be told that they can try and fix this, and the kid can't come forward and feel comfortable saying this to whoever they trust.
Why Connie Burton is just way off base here is that this bill is designed to help the parent.
Yeah.
And any sane person knows that if you're going to legislate this in some way, and which you certainly don't need to, but the person you should be looking out for, the person who is at risk of hurting themselves, the person who is at risk at the bare minimum of mentally torturing themselves, and God forbid they don't do something worse, is a student struggling with when to come out, whether to come out, if they're gay, if they aren't gay, what their gender identity is. And there is no effort in this to help the student. And obviously, it does not assist a student struggling to mandate that a teacher tell their parent. That's it. Only thing you should be sponsoring here is, if you're going to have a bill, is let's make sure at every school there is a counselor equipped to handle sexuality and gender issues so that a student has an ability to go to you and talk to you about it. That would be, but the idea that the victim here is the poor parent, and I don't mean to suggest that a gay student is the victim, but the person who might need assistance is a 13 or 14-year-old or 12-year-old kid who doesn't know who to go to,
the person that is searching, the person that is confused, that is looking for a community and for like a safe place, is being targeted here. And I think I agree with everything that you said. I think that schools should be equipped with guidance counselors that are familiar with kids that might be struggling to come out. And again, I think it's also important that there's no rush or urgency or right way to come out. And that's why I hate this as well.
Yes.
And I would just also say it'd be different if we lived in a world where kids were not getting thrown out of their houses for coming out as gay or trans or any...
How does this help the kid?
It doesn't help them at all. And a threat of violence, I mean, it's just, if we lived in a world where that didn't exist and where that wasn't persistent, then maybe we would feel differently about this. But unfortunately, that does exist. And, Texas has not been a kind state. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not, I don't want to single out Texas necessarily because this is a bill that is being proposed in... Right, but this is a bill that is being proposed in Texas, but every state, we still have strides to go with regards to the LGBT community. So it's not, I don't want to just say just Texas, but we're talking about Texas, and you guys need to up your game because this bill is bullshit.
Don't trust anybody who spells Connie with a K.
Yes, Ben!
But it's also... One last point I want to make on it is it almost seems like it's something that needs to be reported, like it's something that they have to be, that the parents really need to know about because it's something that's, like when you get reported, when the teacher used to go back and report to my parents on my misbehavior in class or the fact that I wasn't doing my homework in time, they would discipline me. That's where I get really... It doesn't sit right. It's just like they going back and reporting on something makes it almost seem like it's not right. Like they're being told on, like it's a crime. It's something that shouldn't be done, and that's where it's awful.
Sorry to interrupt, man, but there's going to be a rash across this country. I don't know whether they get adopted of it's okay to tell on people laws. This is an it's okay to tell on people law because this doesn't come from a place of let's look out for our gay colleagues among us, the gay students among us, and let's help them find community. This comes from they're different, let's let the parents know.
Yeah, and if they want to go to a Mike Pence gay conversion therapy camp, that's their business.
Yeah, sure. Hey, it's just money for AIDS research and treatment to make people better or keep them from getting sick. Let's turn it into gay conversion therapy because sometimes that ends in suicide.
Oh my God! All right,
Vice President-elect.
Let's move on to Ashton Kutcher. At least it's more. Nope, still bad. All bad today, guys. I was going to try and dress it up, but no.
Oh wait, no.
Still pretty bad. Ashton Kutcher was speaking at an event, and he was actually interrupted by a protester named Ariel Gould, who took issue with his involvement and his investment in the company Airbnb. I think we have a photo of the protester's sign. There we go. Airbnb, out of settlements, at Code Pink Ariel Gould. So Ashton Kutcher actually invited Ariel up on stage, and he said, well, he didn't invite her. She walked on stage, and then he engaged with her, but I'm being very nice saying that he invited her. He says, we can get to know each other intimately and understand our collective narratives as a narrative for everyone, and then we can all belong in a world together without borders. Now, what exactly is he referencing? What is Code Pink? So this is what Ariel Gould told the press association. She says, quote, I took to the stage to ask Airbnb to remove their listings from Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. I think Ashton Kutcher needs to use his power and influence in the company to pressure Airbnb to finally remove these listings. We are entering an administration which we expect to be horrible for Palestinian human rights. It's more important now that people rise up and demand equality and freedom and justice for all people from Palestine to Los Angeles. She also went on to talk about Airbnb being complicit in the displacement in Los Angeles and their role in gentrification also happening in the LA area. And, she has gotten the press and the influence and sort of the coverage that she was looking for. Do you think this was constructive? Do you think that we're talking about the issue at hand here, which is a super really important thing to talk about with regards to the Airbnb settlements that you can rent on, I guess, Palestinian land? This is just from my layman's research, but I don't know if this sort of protest is constructive because, again, the headline here is Ashton Kutcher defending Airbnb. Yeah. We're not necessarily talking about the problematic structures and settlements that Airbnb is renting out.
I disagree a little bit, only because I've experienced firsthand how powerful a testament like this can be when you utilize someone who's exterior from the issue. And exterior meaning they're not actually in Palestine, they're not going through this example themselves, but they maybe have some sort of celebrity name, a platform. So one that resonates really close to me is my beloved Glasgow Celtic, a team in Scotland. Their fans they felt like a connection to Palestinians, therefore they vowed to fly Palestinian flags during a game against an Israeli team to show their support for Palestine. They were immediately told that they were going to be fined if they did it. They were going to have repercussions. So they were fined. They flew the Palestinian flags, and then they ended up raising £130,000 to meet the fine that they were going to face and donated it to Palestinian charities. So that's where I feel like it isn't exactly talking about the issue directly as much, but you can see a carryover effect. You can see more issue being shed light on the purpose of the person who's putting forward the protest. So I understand where she's coming from. Like, she wants to feel like maybe she wants to try and make noise wherever she is. It doesn't have to happen within the area that it's involved in, but if you get a celebratory name to maybe stand by it.
Do you think Ashton Kutcher responded effectively? Because I think that his answer, really, it doesn't actually say anything. Do you know what I mean? Saying our collective narrative as a narrative for everyone, we can all belong in a world together without borders.
Now, that wasn't a statement. That's what he said on stage, right?
Right, that's what he said on stage.
So it's off the cuff, which offends a little bit because it's literally nonsense.
It's off the cuff. It doesn't make any sense, but I wonder if maybe he wasn't.
It
made me sort of wonder if maybe he didn't, even though he is an investor in Airbnb, it makes me wonder if perhaps he wasn't. He didn't really understand what was going on in the West Bank, Israeli-occupied territories.
Kutcher is not totally down on what's happening.
No, there's no doubt, and that's where I think this is another conversation. I think we had it once on Pop Trigger where. Sometimes celebrities, because they have platforms, are expected to speak out on things, and sometimes they'll just speak out instinctively and think that they're making a difference. I remember we did a story on, I think it was Zayn Malik, when he got told to speak out on Black Lives Matter, and I don't think he just like instinctive. It was almost like I'll type that, and then he sent it out, and people were like, what are you saying? Like, so I don't believe, like for me, a lot of the time, I argued the case I think you're trying to make, is that at times we're too busy focusing on them, and their response rather than
instead
the actual
of the real issue that Airbnb should address.
Where was he speaking? Like, why was he on stage?
So this is what I can tell you. He was speaking at an event, a nondescript event in Los Angeles.
Okay, so it had nothing to do with this, and she comes out on stage.
Absolutely nothing to do with this.
So he was polite, he engaged with her, so God bless him on that. Ashton Kutcher is not the bad guy in this situation.
No, not at all.
He's an investor in Airbnb.
I was just trying to make the case. I know her point, why she was trying to do something like this.
I got it. I would not have confronted Ashton Kutcher, and she would argue that because it got press, therefore it was worth it. But we can get to know each other intimately and understand our collective narrative as a narrative for everyone, and that we can all belong in a world together without borders.
And
it's pretty priceless.
Yes.
As a nonsense strung together.
In general, upon doing a little bit more research about this story, I also sort of think that Ariel Gold, I really like what I think it's so important what she was protesting and getting out there. I think, of course, I agree with that. However, the sign, Airbnb out of settlements, I think the one job a sign has is to be like, this point, this is it. Like, this is what's happening. This is how I feel about it. Yeah. Airbnb out of settlements, it could, now we know what it means, but I didn't know what it means.
It's because, so another thing to be realistic about is we don't cover enough about the goings on in Palestine. I don't think news outlets do enough. So this is something I'm very familiar with. I really am interested in looking into it further. So I understand what she meant, but again,
would you have understood it if I didn't give you any context to show you the sign?
No, but obviously when you say Airbnb, no settlements, what she's trying to do is she's trying to pose a reaction as to, I know Airbnb, what is she talking about? Let me look into it and see. Therefore, because she's in Los Angeles, she's probably thinking not a lot of people are going to be aware of what she's trying to get across.
I can do a better job for her. Here we go. Airbnb back out of these Israeli-occupied territories in the West Bank.
Yeah, that's better. It's a more direct.
Then you know exactly what it is. I feel like that
literally out of West Bank settlements, we'd at least know.
Airbnb out of West Bank settlements.
Yeah, we'd have
there you go. So Ariel Gold, please.
Just smaller font size. So we have to go. I will ask you, I don't understand, where I lose Ariel Gold is, first of all, I'm Jewish when I need to be, I would defend with many other Jews Israel's right to exist and protect their borders, and they should get everybody out of every settlement, and they should start doing it tomorrow. That's not your territory, it's not your land, get out. And they're not settlements, that makes it sound like they're tents. They're giant housing developments. They're like tract housing, like it's a community, it's a city that you've built, and you just keep building and keep building and keep building and keep building. It's bad. It's bad for the Jews. But I don't understand about the Airbnb displacement and the gentrification. I really don't. And I'm sure there are people who will make a good lefty case to me as to why I should care, and I'm still pretty sure in the end of the day I'm not going to care.
I think the idea is to try and get it to resonate so that we pay attention to it more.
No, I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about why in Los Angeles.
Okay, so
what's wrong with Airbnb in Los Angeles?
Okay, so I found a lot of stuff about this in New York and in some parts of
San Francisco
Los Angeles,
too. I've read about it in San Francisco, definitely.
I'm not so sure about what's going on in LA.
Okay, we'll give me in a different city. We'll just.
Okay, so basically, landlords. The incentive is that landlords and owners of buildings can just rent out their apartment complexes at a way higher price
as Airbnb rather than rent them to actual residents,
and for shorter term leases
and make more money, and so
right.
nobody
And
lives
so
there.
nobody lives there, and so then it drives up the pricing of housing in other places because you have these big buildings in prime locations that people are paying top dollar for.
I'm sure that's happened in some buildings. Whether that's widespread enough that it's actually driving up rates would have to be studied, right?
Right. I still want to find a little bit more research about exactly what's going on in the Los Angeles area, but I know it is a problem in San Francisco and New York.
But housing in San Francisco has always been difficult. I don't know did Airbnb cause a significant spike? I'm dubious. You feel free to prove me wrong, but I got to tell you, that's like 2,833rd most important thing happening in our country. The Airbnb settlements. Look, it's a way to. It is the latest way to bring attention to the outrage of consistently building settlements in the occupied territories.
Well, I think they said that Code Pink, which is part of the organization, I guess, that she's representing, described itself as a grassroots peace and social justice movement that demonstration was staged to demand Airbnb stop listing stolen homes in illegal settlements. So she's trying to represent the idea that this isn't just happening across seas. This is happening right here at home, so that she tries to get it to resonate here so that people might pay attention to it. As you mentioned, whether or not it has some substance or not, maybe there needs to be some sort of clarification as to the message that she's putting across overall. But whether her motive is to bring light to an issue that she wants to bring light to, that we've not been focusing on as much, then
I said with this, I never really thought I would say this, but I feel bad for Ashton Kutcher.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. That's been the second hour. Are we doing a post game? Are we sticking around for a post game?
Are we sticking around?
Okay with me. We'll
Sounds
see.
good to me.
We'll find out.
We'll see.
You'll have
We'll-
to come back, I guess.
Yes. So we'll see you in just a few moments.
Welcome back to TYT Sports. I hope you're having a great day. We have a plethora of stories to get to. Francis Maxwell, J.R. Jackson, an upgrade from Jason Rubin. I'm just going to say it.
Damn.
It's an upgrade. All right, so if you can see on the sidebars, we have some nicely set up. We've got to talk some Jared Goff to start things off. So if you would have seen yesterday and I believe 2 days ago, it was trending on Twitter that Jared Goff is coming back. Well, not coming back. He's coming in.
Hey,
he's going to be allowed
all
in a way
season. I've
to
been
play.
talking about how Tom Brady's back. Brady's back. Guess who's back? Jared Goff. As everyone knows, I'm a helpless Rams fan.
Bandwagoner.
This would be the time to bandwagon. There's nothing to jump onto. But no, Jared Goff, as we all know, taken overall by the Rams, top pick. Quarterbacks are always seen as the guy who's going to come in and save the day. So, of course, as we've been seeing, even in some of the Rams' wins, the 9-6, the 6-3s.
Just phenomenal games.
Yeah, I mean, you would think if your defense, and this is against the Seahawks, in the first game, 6-3, and then the Jets, we're not going to brag about that 9-6 win, but the defense is doing its job, and then so to need the offense to come in and do something, is this the case? Everyone thinks it happens with the quarterback. I don't tend to think that way.
Yeah.
But let's see.
Well, it poses an interesting thought. I mean, it's going to attract, I would say, the fan base to see if they can put something together offensively. But we have a couple of quotes that I want to get to first, just discussing the fact that he's coming back. So this is the Rams head coach, Jeff Fisher. I don't want to say it's a new era, it's a new start, but in a lot of ways it is. Jared Goff's going to be under center this week at home against a really good defensive team in the Miami Dolphins. So big challenge ahead. He continued. We're committed to this. We didn't do what we did this offseason and trade for Jared to just spot play him over the next 5 or 6 weeks. Even though there's people out there saying, well, you're doing it now because your playoff chances aren't real good. Well, no, our playoff chances are still fine. We're doing this for 2 reasons. 1, we feel like this is the best decision. 2, he has a chance to help us win football games.
Maybe this is a little bit, this is in the middle of the quote, but people are talking about the Rams' playoff chances. Every time they mention it, I kind of shrug. It's like, okay, fine, yes, sure. Like, mathematically, the playoff chances are still alive. But if this team makes the playoffs, them getting to the playoffs would be one of those teams that as soon as you see them play in that first week, you go, this could have gone to a deserving team.
Yeah.
Give it to a more losing team that had a chance to maybe score a touchdown, maybe a field goal.
But
no, that was just Miller quotes. That was just a side note. But the thought of bringing in the new quarterback that he said we trade up for, it makes some level of sense. But as we've known the entire season, they've been talking about how the kid isn't ready, the kid isn't ready, the kid isn't ready. And maybe he's ready now, but that's not what I heard. In any of the quotes, I listened to more of what Jeff Fisher had to say, and it was, we've been slowly getting them going. This isn't just a snap decision just because of what has been happening. They won last week, but this isn't just a snap decision. It's been a slow burning process. Let's get him involved. Is he ready? I haven't heard that yet, so I'm still believing his original statement of the kid is not ready.
Yeah, and there's only one way to really find out, and I guess if this is the problem we have, right? So if your playoff chances are taking a massive hit and there's mathematically very slim chance that you're going to get it, I understand this because now you're going to use these games as a way to try and train him for next season and try to push forward the idea that you have this quarterback that you can use. The playoff chances they're not great, but they're not completely out of the running. So it does pose an interesting question. But I wanted to ask you, for me, when you look at a new team that comes in, not a new team, but coming back to Los Angeles, at the start of the season, if you were to tell Rams fans, we'll give you the playoffs right now, first round, do you think they would take that as a success this year already?
And like losing the first round?
Yeah, but losing just to get to the playoffs in general. You think so?
Absolutely.
Well, I agree, and that's why I think that to make the argument that there's a good chance that they would make the playoffs as a reason not to play him, I don't buy it as much because I think that they are, if they do happen to play Jared Goff and make it to the playoffs, I think you're shooting above your expectations. So I think it might be a win-win. If you play him and things go south or even further south than what we've seen, then I don't think you're in as much of a bad situation as what you could be with a quarterback who you recruited with the idea that he's going to be your starting quarterback. That's why you would go and draft him first pick. But I think that he's useless if you don't give him any sort of playing time. There is, in any sport, there is no substitute for playing time. You can practice on the field, you can do what you want to do, coming up from college especially, but look how much Ezekiel Elliott's thriving, being given the ability to go forth and do it. And yes, he's in a good team. He's in a great offensive line that's blocking for him. But I still think that you've got to give someone the opportunity to see how they handle these situations.
And that's the key. So I wish I had actually looked. I had forgotten the details of the trade, but I know they got rid of some defensive guys, and I don't know if it was lost to free agency or not, but which all aspects, because the team had a few shuffles. But you wonder if he have to surround a young quarterback with people that can help him. You mentioned Ezekiel Elliott, the running back for the Cowboys. He's surrounded by guys who directly help his success.
Yeah.
If you have a great offensive line, which the Cowboys do, it generally helps the running back with holes. And not that they're all gaping holes, because he's still a good running back. I don't want to take any credit from him. But with a rookie quarterback that you had a problem with his readiness at the beginning when you brought him in, there needs to be pieces around him that help him.
Yeah.
Now he's got Todd Gurley. Oh my God.
Yeah.
He came in last year after a horrible injury in college and looked great. But he's not looking great this year.
Yep.
It's not because Todd Gurley forgot how to play football. There's other things that are not working to create those spaces for him. If Todd Gurley was running in Dallas, he'd be running all over the place.
Yeah, I wanted to get to what Jared Goff had to actually say on this matter. He had this via an interview talking about the situation ahead.
And see during the games and learn from a lot of the things Case did, good and bad. And you know, it's been a long process, I guess. You know, trying to pick up everything and get ready for it. And I think I have, and I think I've been ready for a little while and feel good and feel.
Well, it was brief, but it feels good.
I'm trying to read him. Obviously, it's different for each person, but because you get coached as a professional athlete to come in humble, especially when you haven't proven anything yet, and even after you have, as Dak Prescott has in Dallas, to still say, well, this is still not just me. I'm okay. I'm enjoying what everyone's giving around me. So I don't want to read Jared Goff's confidence level. But if I was to do something ignorant like that, I would say he doesn't seem that confident.
I agree. Yeah, I think so. I think that you could blame it on a lot of things, but when I seen him, his first real interview he did after he was drafted, I think he was on Jimmy Kimmel, and you could tell there was this aura, like he was flying in there. He was on cloud nine.
Right after drafting?
Yeah, right after drafting. He was like, and a lot of people would be. It's your dream. I understand it. But it seemed like he came in with this expectancy that he was going to be gift-wrapped a lot of things in front of him and he was going to be the star man going forward. But with any team relatively new, it's a transition period and a lot of things in the sport of football have to work in sync together in order for that to be successful. Dak Prescott, deservedly so, is getting a lot of credit for what he's doing at the Cowboys. But the Cowboys are remarkably better than what they have been in the last couple of seasons. Defensively, they are solid. Offensive line, I would go as far as saying one of the best in the league. So these are all boosting his confidence level. It's not taken away from how good he is playing, but you got to have a lot of things that go along with it to make sure that he has a successful game. But what do you think? Predictions? Do you think you're gonna root for him?
Okay, so maybe I'll go off the prediction. They'll win this week. Maybe not decidedly or overwhelmingly, but even if they may look decent. I'm just worried if they do that the week after they're gonna fall into this lull,
the comfort
and
level,
get destroyed.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that only because again, that's my bias, that's my homer coming out. Let's go LA Rams, Super Bowl champions, Jared Goff, Super Bowl MVP.
All right, we like the optimism. We'll move forward now to discuss LeBron James. So, if you've seen around, there has been a back and forth between LeBron James and living legend Phil Jackson. So, LeBron wasn't happy, and those close to LeBron were not happy for the use of the word posse when Phil Jackson was describing LeBron James's inner circle. Don't want to hear it just from me. Let's listen to LeBron's take on this matter.
No relationship at all. I had nothing but respect for him as a coach, for what he was able to do. Obviously, at the helm of one of my favorite player of all time, MJ, and also been there growing up and watching with the Lakers. But I got nothing for him. To use that label, and if you go and read the definition of what the word posse is, it's not what I've built over my career. It's not what I stand for. It's not what my family stands for. And I believe the only reason he used that word because he see young African Americans trying to make a difference.
LeBron James is not happy with the use of this word. I wouldn't take it offensively, but here's the thing. I'm white. And it would not, it doesn't have any context towards me.
You'd be like, that's kind of badass.
Yeah, I would be like, holy shit, I feel kind of cool. I've got my sweater and my collared shirt, and I'm being called a member of a posse. But let's take what LeBron James is referencing to.
So there's obviously there's always a few definitions, but according to dictionary.com, a body or force armed with legal authority.
Yeah, that's it.
Or it's slang, a group of friends or associates, and one of the examples, a posse of drug dealers. I think that's what LeBron heard when he was relayed. At least I don't know if this was a written interview with Phil Jackson.
Yeah, no. He clearly stated this word. It's not like it couldn't be taken out of context.
Absolutely.
He said that LeBron's inner circle is part of a posse, and one of those members actually who shared his view on this as well as Carmelo Anthony. So let's take a quick look at what Melo had to say on this. So. He said, I would never want to hear that word about me and my, I don't want to say crew, but people I consider family and I've come up with and through thick and thin. I would want to be called tight-knit group of family, but that's what I consider those people to me. And then he was asked, is posse an offensive word to you? I think anybody would understand that. Anybody, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist or an educated person to understand kind of what it means to us. And that is crystal clear, the difference here. It's as much as there is going to be the tyrant of abuse and talking about how sensitive we are, it doesn't offend you because it doesn't have any sort of hateful, negative context towards you. But towards a person of color, towards an African American, I want to get your thoughts, JR. If someone said this to you, do you take it in that context if you're talking about a tight-knit group of people?
If it's just a group of guys that you're in college and you do your thing where I think you can see that even. But where LeBron took offense was this is a professional group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Several of them have branched out and created their own very successful business ventures because of the platform that he was given to people. So the frustration comes in no matter what you've done, you continue to get placed back in this degenerate group. There's a negative tone to it. Now, when LeBron extrapolated and said, I wonder what he says when the cameras aren't on, he's insinuating on things like the N-word, things like thug is what I took him as saying, which is also another a dog whistle word for the N-word. But so when you have a professional group of people, and they're generally young, what LeBron is 32 or so, maybe early 30s, he is thinking we're a professional group of people who do business, who do it professionally, who do it well, who are very successful at what we do. When are you going to start giving us respect for who we are? And not that we came out and started asking for it. You brought us up.
Yeah.
So if you bring up the associates of the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, you don't call that a group of, you don't call that a posse.
Exactly.
And when they go to the owner's box, this is always a little annoyed me a bit. Whenever they speak to, and this is another sport, but Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, Robert Kraft, people interviewing him on the field, they'll say, Mr. Kraft, or like there's no, you can't call him Robert.
Yeah.
Because that's just beneath him. Like there's this level of respect you exalt him to simply because he has money.
Yeah.
Guess who else is rich? All these guys. LeBron is extremely rich.
Yes, he is.
Except guys like him, as soon as he signed onto that Nike deal, which was worth hundreds of $1 millions before he dribbled a basketball, people started going, oh, what is this guy? Instead of going, oh, this guy's a multi-millionaire. Should we call him Mr. James from now on?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like there's a level of respect that's demanded, and I'm sorry we have this unwritten respect for certain people that we don't have for the rest, and I get his frustration over it.
Yeah, and I think it is valid. It's the same thing as if you imagine what like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, like these guys, if they've got a group of friends, are they called their posse?
We have terms that we've always used in the country: off the reservation, Indian giver, all those things. And then when you stop and someone goes, hey. Listen to what the hell you just said. And you go, why did I use the term off the reservation?
Yeah.
I've never been on a reservation before. I've never talked to anyone who's lived on a reservation before. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
It could mean bad things, but it's our society. It's in our general vocabulary. And if you don't think about the things you say, you'll say some things that mean bad things and maybe not what you meant to convey.
Yeah.
So as soon as someone highlights it, don't go, how dare you, go, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fix my vocabulary now.
I think that
it's
is the
okay,
key.
and then you're not a racist.
I think if someone highlights it and you respond that way, if you respond deflecting, then you don't want to hear the case, and you want to just be, you're being too sensitive. But on the other side, if someone highlights it in a way they brandish you straight away without giving you the chance to explain, I think that anchors the divide more so. Let's move forward to lighter notes, which is discussing the U.S. men's national team's head coach, Jurgen Klinsmann. So we're talking some soccer here. JR, they came under a tough loss recently. And by tough, I mean it was a rough one to face, losing 4-0 to Costa Rica, a team that were, let's say, an interesting team to watch in the World Cup. They made it past further than what they expected. But then they weren't the same team in the Copa America, proving that perhaps it was a one-hit wonder where they just got the luck of the draw. They had some good players, no doubt, but the Copa America recently in the summer proved that they weren't as good of a team as what people were alluding to, but they just smashed the US 4-0. So I want to get to a quote really quick. This is from Fox Soccer, where they're talking about, I always reference soccer that way. I can't say it without making a joke. So there are some results that cannot be overcome, and losing 4-0 to Costa Rica is one of them. It was the Americans' worst shutout loss in World Cup qualifying since 1957, and the Ticos could have easily scored more. Worst of all, it was the team's second straight loss to open the final round of qualifying, following their defeat to Mexico for the first time home qualifying loss in 15 years, and now the Americans' World Cup hopes are in serious peril.
Like they may not even make it to the Cup.
Yes, they may not make it to the World Cup if things...
I mean, not awesome, but that's like, whenever I say awesome, it's like, that's extraordinary, that's noteworthy.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well, when you don't...
celebrating it.
To give a little context as to the process of making it to the World Cup, like, so the United States play in the CONCACAF, which is an organization based on the countries that are relatively close to you, you'll play. The CONCACAF is one of the weakest in terms of competition level. That's just a blatant fact. Mexico are a good team, Costa Rica have their days, the United States should be superior. Like, trust me, I would give my left leg to play in the CONCACAF as Scotland. We have to mix it with Germany, Poland, England, like...
Why are you being biased?
It's not, but it's true, man.
You're gonna say CONCACAF is so weak. Why? What's this bias?
It's simple state facts. It is hard, but this is a question that comes to any sport. Is when things aren't going your way. Jurgen Klinsmann has, I think at this point has done a great job as a US manager. He's taken them to a level where they can compete. They're considered, they made top 20 in the world on several occasions. They are considered to be a good team. They made it, they were merely one clear bad miss away from making it to the quarterfinals of the World Cup.
Right.
They have, I think in a way, made their case for being a competitive team in the future. But it does pose the other question is, are they getting complacent? Jurgen Klinsmann has fluctuated with his position, his choices, and I wanted to pose it to JR. Do you think it's just a natural fan's reaction when things aren't going their way to blame the coaches?
As a fan of soccer every 4 years, I mean, I guess it's perfect for that because you don't really know what goes into all of it and building up to it. And I think I'm not going to be the guy who disparages American soccer fans because there's actually a lot. And we always have that rep, but it's never going to be to the level. It just isn't. So we're going to have these types of things where we assume, oh, who's the coach now? Because we think of it in the terms of the sports that we understand more.
Yeah.
What's that coach doing now? There's no way it's the player's fault. Oh, well, we don't know the details that goes into things that happen like this. So I'm leaning towards it's not necessarily something you got to clear house, but maybe this is a wake-up call.
That's actually a great point, is that when it comes to international coaches specifically, is you don't have a week-by-week basis to get your players in sync. So that's why I give a lot of credit to international coaches that are able to imply what they want to do in a team in a relatively quick basis, because you get the players for, 2-3 weeks before Christmas, like out of that specific period of time. You have to get them all together, get them tight-knit, and get them playing the same system, and then they're off and playing with their club teams and working on systems that they need to adapt and play with them. And of course they're professionals, and you would expect them to come in, grasp these fundamentals early and play it forward. But the one flaw that I have had with Jurgen Klinsmann is something that doesn't go along with the ability that you have to work with your players week in, week out. It's just simply acknowledging that the old guard isn't that good anymore. The Michael Bradleys of the world, relying on the Clint Dempseys. The future is the Christian Pulisic and the young players who are coming in. I don't give two flying hoots whether Christian Pulisic still has to do his homework at night before he goes to bed because he's so young. He's a good player. You don't have that wide a plethora of choices in this team. Play him. He should be playing. I don't care if Borussia Dortmund, his club team, only play him for an odd 10, 15 minutes here or there. They have a large selection of great players. The United States don't, so he should be playing every moment. And Jurgen Klinsmann's coming around to that, but still not enough so. It still took a push and a shove for him to be like, okay, I understand it. We need to start playing the youth a little bit more. I think Jurgen Klinsmann is not the best man manager. I don't think he works well with grooming players. And again, that's a hard job as an international. It's not that's kind of the club coach's job, because you get these players every single day, and your job in a way is to raise them as a footballer and groom them through the process. So when you're an international coach, you're there to get one job done, and that's get the best group of players you can get imaginable and go forward and win. So the way I sympathize with Jurgen Klinsmann, first of all, because the United States don't gift wrap him and develop players, because you talked about it. It's not the number one sport. It's not even the fourth best sport, or it's considered in that realm. Yeah. And every other person in the world gets players coming through the system that's like in Argentina. Yeah, we're going to develop the next Messi. It's inevitable. They already had one previous to him. His name was Maradona, and then they have Messi coming through. Whereas people in the US, like naive fans, will sit there and be like, why don't we develop a Messi? It's so easy. Oh, it is? Well, how come no one else in the world has been doing it then? It just so happens that it is the ability that you've put and the confidence that you give towards the sport that it will come back and pay full-fold, whereas the US hasn't given it that confidence, it hasn't given it the funding, it hasn't allowed more players to develop. So Jurgen Klinsmann comes in and he's thinking, all right, I've got these old guard players who are decent playing in big teams, I'll just put them together and we'll make ourselves hard to beat. And it works to a certain extent. But when those players start to move on, that's where you need to at least put some trust in the youth when you're developing some decent players.
Again, the fan base, the general idea, and again, the one that evokes your American accent is we have this expectation. We're told from birth, you're the best. Yeah. You're better than the rest of the world. Even in a sport that traditionally we don't pay attention to or we don't fuel or develop, we're like, oh, but it's just soccer.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that I think that this is the point I've made since I stepped foot on this soil. It's not because the sport, everyone will make all these different reasons, and I love them. They're hilarious. You don't score enough. It's too long. They flop, right? All of those things happen in every other sport. Like, we just talked about a 9-6 game in NFL. We talked about how LeBron James has been flopping all over the court for the past 2 years. So those are immediately void arguments. The main reason it doesn't live up to expectation, which is I'm directing to anyone who has any sort of discrepancy. Yes, you, Edwin, as well, who's shared some tweets about soccer not being a sport. The reason, and bear with me, I've talked about this many times, that Americans don't like soccer as much is because you're not the best at it. That is it. If you were the best, you would love it. Because Americans just love to be the best. That's it. You love American football because no one in the world plays it, and you're the best. You love baseball because you play this thing called the World Series, and yes, it doesn't mean the world. I get it. It was based on the paper that was called the New York World or whatever it was. Ben described it to me. Right. But you're still the best in the world at that. And you love basketball because you're by far and away the best in the world. Why is NHL not as big? It's still big. Oh, because Canadians are actually really good at it. So this is a reality, people. Is if you were the best at soccer, you would love the sport. The funny thing is the US, in terms of the national team, are pretty good. Like, that's in comparison to other countries, they're pretty good, but it's still not enough. You have to be number one. You have to be number one. All right, let us know what you think. I love this conversation. It was interesting. Got into a lot of stuff. Make sure to hit us up on Twitter at JRJackson, at Francis_Maxwell. Hit the subscribe button, goes a long way if you're watching on Pluto. Thank you so much. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, make sure to click on the sidebar. You can flick through those videos as they go
USA World Cup champions.
What year?
2018.
2020.
Damn it.
Close.
Wasn't it just...
No, I'm joking. Yeah, 2018.
Oh,
You're right.
Jesus, I knew it was right.
2018. And do you know where it's played? Russia. The US is going to be welcomed with open arms.
Welcome to a fascinating Friday show. Drop it. Brett Ehrlich, Michael Shore, Jake Duger, Jimmy Dore, everybody. It's a power battle. All right. Yeah, of course you guys want to see this shirt. Fine, I'll show it to you. Okay. It's Run Wasikalan.
Oh!
PNC.
Wow!
Okay. Isn't that cool? Isn't that a
a cool shirt?
Yes, I want one.
Yes. Well, shoptyt.com. It's a great Christmas present.
That was a setup. That was a total
great.
setup. You're
I'm
how do I
serious.
want one?
Jimmy.
I had not seen that shirt. I love that.
All it was missing was someone like struggling to put on a T-shirt, like in an infomercial. Like, I don't know how. It's very easy. Go to shop2YT, and they glide on seamlessly.
So the Bernie shirts, by the way, we're gonna take them off the store on at December 31st. Jesus just sent me I just saw your email. They're flying off the shelves because people are in a panic. Like, I gotta grab them.
You know, there's this company, this Supreme T-shirt company. Have you heard about this? All right, the people are going to laugh at me because everybody apparently knows about this who's younger than me. But they sell these shirts for like a minute, and all they do is they say Supreme, right? And different ways. Sometimes they're like this, sometimes they're like this. And they're hundreds of dollars on a secondary market. People line up outside the Supreme store.
No, I didn't know it.
Yeah, Supreme.
But
that's what I'm talking about. The Bernie shirt will be a collector's item.
Once we stop selling them, though, I'm not even kidding. Those are good. Like on eBay, they're probably gonna get a good, because they're cool. The Bernie So Punk, Heisenberg, all those things. We've created an interesting secondary market.
Exactly.
Michael, I like the Supreme, but I mean, Diana Ross was great, but come on.
So good. She's the headliner, though. I agree with you.
Been sitting on that one too, right?
Yeah. All right, shop2it.com. I know it's a weird way to start a show, but I'm going to make it even weirder. So a number of Trump cabinet positions have been named today. Rudy's got to be nervous, like, still not named.
Right.
I got to get something here. Newt's like all of a sudden on the outside looking in. Okay, anyway. But I'm going to shock the world later in this program by doing a significant defense of hold for it. Steve Bannon.
Babe,
Okay, all right.